Chapter 586. Young master, I really can't walk anymore. It's all my fault, dragging the young master down. This place is not far from my home, so if the young master has something to do, please go ahead. I'll rest here for a bit and go back by myself. Lu Wanting knew that if she begged, the other side would ignore her, so she decided to take a step back. She thought that there was no man in this world that would have the heart to leave an injured and weak girl like her in this dark alley. This was especially true for this elegant young master dressed in white. He had saved her out of righteous indignation, so he would not abandon her. She was indeed very smart and her heart was very good at scheming against people. After Chu Xiaobai heard her words, his expression was indeed touched as he walked over to her. He stopped in front of her and looked down at her. Your foot. Is it serious? Lu Wanting looked down as she rubbed her ankle. In a soft voice she said, It's all right, it's just very painful. Young master, you don't need to care about me, I've already troubled young master enough. You should leave first. She silently waited for Chu Xiaobai's next words, Then I'll carry you. Her heart was beating fast. This was a good plan that she had spent a long time thinking of. She had to grab this chance no matter what. As long as he was willing to carry her, she would follow him for the rest of her life. Who would have thought that after waiting for a while, Chu Xiaobai would not say anything? She looked up and looked at him with a loving gaze. Her lips parted, Young master, you. Before she finished, Chu Xiaobai nodded and said, All right. Since it's like this, I'll be leaving first. Lu Wanting was stunned, almost not daring to believe her ears. You. She just spat out a single word when she saw Chu Xiaobai's figure flash. Like a white lotus, he disappeared from her eyes. This. How was this possible? He actually left her, a weak girl, all alone in this dark alley in the middle of winter. Lu Wanting's face turned incomparably pale as she looked around with eyes filled with fear. That dark shadow was like a ghost baring its fangs. She was so scared that her body began to tremble. Her hands hugged her shoulders and she tightly buried her head in her chest. She was filled with regret right now. Why did she think of such a bad idea? In the end, she did not get close to the other side and was dumped. If she knew it would be like this, she would not have done anything. She would have obediently followed behind the white-clothed young master. Perhaps she would have already returned to her familiar room, returning to her parents' warm embrace. A cold wind blew from an unknown corner, bringing with it a rotten smell. When she smelled it, she almost vomited. Woo 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 woo. She couldn't bear it any longer. Tears flowed out of her eyes and she began to sob. The current her heart was filled with pain and fear, completely different from the acting she had in front of Chu Xiao. Suddenly, she heard chaotic footsteps coming from the entrance of the alley. It seemed like many people were running in this direction. Flames flickered, and these people were even holding torches high up in their hands. Lu Wu Ti's words. Lu Ti, Lu Ti, I. She wanted. She quickly. She. Young miss. The crowd rushed into the alley with torches in their hands, shouting loudly. Chapter 587. Father, your daughter is here. She was pleasantly surprised. She stood up and ran towards the fire. Looking over, she saw that it was the Lu Palace's servants and guards, and the one walking in front was Imperial Censor Lu. She threw herself into Imperial Censor Lu's embrace and cried in a very sad manner. Why are you so disobedient? Father didn't let you see the lanterns, so you sneaked out by yourself. What if something happened to you? Wait until we return home and see how your father will punish you. Although Imperial Censor Lu felt sorry for his daughter, he still fiercely reprimanded her. Lu Wanting looked down in grievance as tears kept falling. She now understood what had happened. It must have been that white-clothed young master who told her family where she was. That was why Imperial Censor Lu was able to find her so quickly. Her heart was very complex. She didn't know if she was grateful or resentful towards Chu Xiaobai. She heard Imperial Censor Lu say, It's a good thing you met King Jing in this time. If you sneak out again, do you think you will have this kind of luck again? King Jing'an? Lu Wanting blinked and pulled her father's hand. Father, the King Jing'an you're talking about, is he a white-clothed young master? What, you don't know who he is? Then why did he send you back? Imperial Censor Lu stared at her. Your daughter really doesn't know who he is, but he saved your daughter and sent your daughter home. Your daughter asked for his name and wanted to thank him, but he was not willing to tell me. Lu Wanting lowered her head and replied. Her voice was filled with joy that she could not suppress as flowers bloomed in her heart. King Jing'an, so he was King Jing'an Chu Xiaobai. the legendary #1 young master of the capital city. He was young and charming, causing countless girls to fall for him. She never thought that she would have this kind of fortuitous encounter, meeting him and being saved by him. Could this be her Red Lawn Star movement? Thank you? He is the respected King Jing and, a member of the royal family, how could he care about your thanks? Even your father doesn't know what kind of gift to give him. You've met a noble person this time. Lu Wanting lowered her head without saying a word, but her lips slightly curled up. Chu Xiaobai came out of the Lu Palace and went straight to the royal palace. He was still a bit worried and prepared to ask Zhui Feng about the emperor's whereabouts. However, just as he turned a corner, he heard the sound of wind behind him. Then, a gray-clothed figure appeared in front of him and cupped his fists. Chu Xiaobai saw this and was filled with joy. When Chu Xiaobai saw this, he was pleasantly surprised. He called out, "Zhui Feng, why are you here? This king was looking for you." Zhui Feng's face slightly froze as he said, "Your Highness, the emperor has summoned you." Chu Xiaobai gave a bitter laugh and said, "Emperor? Why would your majesty have time to see me at this time? Your Highness, you should know what you have done. This subordinate didn't think that a righteous person like your Highness would say one thing and do another." Zhui Feng curled his lips and said in a sarcastic manner. Chu Xiaobai immediately raised his brows and coldly looked at Zhui Feng. "Zhui Feng, you are becoming bolder and bolder, daring to speak to this king like this. Feng, you're Xiao Yizchen to say, Qin, king? Speak clearly, what did this king do?" Chapter 588. Chu Xiaobai's face instantly sunk. That's right, she was brought out by this king, but she was taken away by the emperor. When she left, she did not even leave a single word behind. This king almost went crazy looking for her. Does the emperor think this punishment is not enough? Does he want to bring this king back to be beaten 80 times? Zhui Feng lowered his head. "This subordinate heard your highness' words that night and respected and admired your highness, but I never thought that in just a day, you would do this kind of thing. You've miserably tricked this subordinate. Now that the emperor has found out, I ask your highness to hand over the person." Chu Xiaobai's heart skipped a beat as he asked, "Hand over the person? Hand over what person? Are you saying that she's not with his majesty? Your highness, since you dare to do this, why don't you dare admit it? You said that she was taken away by the emperor, but this subordinate thinks that she was hidden by your highness, right? This subordinate has always been by the emperor's side. If it was the emperor who took away the princess consort, why would this subordinate need to find your highness for her?" Zhui Feng looked up with a serious expression. Chu Xiaobai's heart began to wildly beat. He felt his mouth go dry and his heart turn into a sea of flames, but his back was covered in a cold sweat. "Then you're saying that she isn't with the emperor? It wasn't the emperor who took her away? Then why did she disappear? That Miss Lu clearly said that she saw a tall black-clothed man with her. Could it be that she was lying to me?" His mind was in chaos as he stood there in a daze. He suddenly gave a loud shout and ran back. Zhui Feng was shocked and quickly followed. He asked, "Your Highness, where are you going? The emperor is waiting for you." Chu Xiaobai's mind was in chaos as he blurted out, "I'm going to find her. I want to ask her clearly. Who are you looking for?" Chu Xiaobai suddenly stopped moving. Even if he found Lu Wanting, what could he do? What if the other side insisted that what she saw was true? Perhaps he had guessed wrong and the black-clothed man that took her away was not the emperor? Zhui Feng, quickly report to the emperor. She has been taken away. She is gone." He turned around and grabbed Zhui Feng's wrist. Zhui Feng suspiciously looked at him. "Your Highness, this subordinate feels that you should hand the princess consort over. Last time you took the princess consort away, the emperor not punishing you was already very merciful. Since you already know the truth, why are you doing this?" Chu Xiaobai's chest was filled with blood. His fingers exerted strength and Zhui Feng's bones began to crack as he said, I didn't. Zhui Feng, isn't your tracking technique unparalleled in the world? Help me find her. You can definitely find her." Zhui Feng felt like his wrist was about to break as he grimaced in pain. "Your Highness, let go. If you break this subordinate's wrist, how will this subordinate find him?" Chu Xiaozhui's s let, but his s, Chu. Qin Xiaobai's s, but, and his, and. "Your Highness, when and where did you discover that the princess consort was missing?" he asked. "Not long ago, on a stone bridge." Chu Xiaobai quickly explained the situation and then said, "The entire process took less than half a cup of tea's time. When I looked up, I couldn't see her anymore." This subordinate wants to go take a look at the bridge. Chapter 589. Chu Xiaobai did not say another word as he quickly brought Zhui Feng back to the stone bridge. The river under the bridge was vast and there were lanterns filled with hope floating in the water, but there was no one on the bridge. She was standing here at the time. When I was fighting below, she even gave me a faint smile. Chu Xiaobai thought back to the scene and his heart filled with pain. Zhui Feng nodded, but he did not say anything. He first walked back and forth several times on the stone bridge before lying down on the ground. Only his 4 limbs were on the ground like a lizard, looking very strange. Chu Xiaobai did not laugh at him. He knew that Zhui Feng's tracking skills were unparalleled in the world, but this was the first time he had seen him use this skill in front of him. He saw Zhui Feng lying on the ground, crawling inch by inch, almost covering half of the stone bridge. He looked very carefully, not missing a single crack in the stone. Then he jumped up from the ground and his expression became solemn. Your Highness, you're right. The princess consort, she has indeed been taken away by someone. This subordinate has looked carefully and only saw traces of the princess consort coming, but not traces of her leaving. This means that she did not leave willingly and was taken away by someone else. Chu Xiaobai anxiously said, then quickly chase after her. Where did she go? We need to go save her immediately. Zhui Feng shook his head and said in a dejected voice, this subordinate has not found anything yet, but there is one thing I'm sure of. This person took the princess consort away and did not leave a single trace. His qinggong must be very good, not below ours. Chu Xiaobai's heart sank. He blankly said, if even you can't find her, then who can find her? He suddenly forcefully clenched his fist and angrily said, it's him. I think it must be third brother. I'm going to ask third brother. Zhui Feng quickly pulled him back. Your Highness, please calm down. This matter might not be done by King Ding Yuan. Even if King Ding Yuan really took the princess consort away, that is also. He found it a bit hard to say, but Chu Xiaobai naturally understood his meaning. That's right, even if third brother really took her away, what could he do? Because she was his third brother's princess, not his. What qualifications did he have to question his third brother? Ask his third brother for her? But, are we just going to let third brother take her away like this? Third brother, he will definitely imprison her and not give her freedom. Chu Xiaobai tightly grasped his chest, feeling like his heart was about to crack. He wanted to give her freedom and happiness, but he never thought that he would send her into a cage, making her lose the freedom she wanted forever. Zhui Feng did not say anything. He closed his eyes and walked back and forth on the stone bridge twice before suddenly stopping. Your Highness, this subordinate feels that this matter might not be done by King Ding Yuan. He suddenly said. If it wasn't him, who else could it be? Chu Xiaobai angrily said as he stared at Zhui Feng. Why are you speaking for him? Zhui Feng said. Zhui Feng nodded and said, this subordinate did find something different, but I am not sure. This subordinate can only use another method to see if I can find the whereabouts of the princess. Feng? Your Highness, do you have anything that the princess consort has used on you? Feng? Chapter 590. Zhui Feng revealed a slightly embarrassed look. This subordinate has a use for it. Chu Xiaobai looked at him with a doubtful gaze. He took out the mirror from his chest and gave it to him. This mirror was left behind by her not long ago. Zhui Feng reached out to take it and placed it in front of his nose to take a few deep sniffs. Chu Xiaobai's heart filled with anger seeing this and he took the mirror back. Stinky brat, what are you doing? This mirror had been placed in her chest before and still had her fragrance on it. Zhui Feng's actions were simply frivolous, so it was no wonder he was angry. Zhui Feng's face turned red and he explained, Your Highness has wronged this subordinate. This subordinate is not a frivolous person. This subordinate just wanted to smell the princess consort's scent and then find her whereabouts. Small. Do you think you're a dog? Chu Xiaobai stared at him. Zhui Feng said in a deep voice, If your Highness doesn't believe me, this subordinate has nothing to say. He took out a black cloth from his chest and covered his eyes. Then he took a few deep sniffs and began to walk in a certain direction. Chu Xiaobai was surprised and couldn't help following behind Zhui Feng. Although Zhui Feng was blindfolded, his footsteps became faster and faster. It was like he was seeing with his eyes, not hitting any obstacles at all. Moreover, he used his qinggong and moved very fast. Only while he was walking he kept taking deep breaths. He really looked like a dog. Chu Xiaobai silently criticized him, but his face did not reveal anything. He knew that Zhui Feng's tracking ability was strange, but he never thought it would be this strange. He now understood why Jue Feng could accurately find his whereabouts after being hit by 2 thunderbolt eggs. So it was like this. He silently followed behind Jue Feng, not making a sound to disturb him. Your Highness, they should have left the city. Jue Feng stopped at the foot of the city wall. He pulled down the black cloth over his eyes and looked up at the tall city wall. With this kind of height, no matter how good their qigong was, no one could jump up, not to mention they were carrying a person. Unless it was a bird. Left the city? What are we waiting for? Keep chasing. Chu Xiaobai said. He took a deep breath and jumped up. His left foot tapped on the city wall and he used the momentum to jump up. When he reached the top of the city wall, his right foot tapped on the city wall. After doing this 3 times, he reached the top of the city wall. Your Highness has good qigong. Jue Feng gave a word of praise and also climbed up the city wall. Only his martial arts were completely different from Chu Xiaobai's. He used his hands and feet to grab onto the wall, quickly moving like a giant spider. He could move very fast and did not make a single sound. Even Chu Xiaobai couldn't help admiring him when he saw this. Jue Feng, others practice the gecko wall climbing technique, but I didn't expect your spider wall climbing technique to be 10 times better than the gecko. Jue Feng's face turned red and he blushed as he said, Your Highness, stop teasing this subordinate. He Feng's face and then said, Jue Feng's Feng. The 2 of them used their qigong and went down the wall. This time Jue Feng used his spider wall climbing technique. When he landed, he covered his eyes with a black cloth and ran to the left. Chu followed behind. Feng time for long for Feng. Feng. So. Zi Feng and Feng followed. So. Chu to Feng. This is the Imperial Palace's courtyard. Chu Xiaobai looked at the building in front of him in a daze. Then he glared at Jue Feng and said through gritted teeth, Jue Feng. Jue Feng was also stunned, with a look of disbelief on his face. Chapter 591. The truth is in front of you, what else do you need to say? You think it's very interesting to play tricks on this king like this, right? Jue Feng, this king never thought that you would lie to me with the emperor playing around with me. Seeing me run around like a fool, it's very interesting, isn't it? Chu Xiaobai became angrier the more he spoke and the veins on his forehead popped out. He thought of the worry, anxiety, sadness and regret he felt tonight. All sorts of emotions had tortured him to the point of going crazy, but he never thought that it was someone else playing tricks on him. A sense of humiliation from being deceived and fooled overwhelmed him. He angrily stared at Jue Feng, wishing he could make 2 holes in Jue Feng's face. Jue Feng was stunned as he stuttered, No. It's not like this. Your Highness, listen to this subordinate's explanation, it really isn't like this. The Emperor. He could not continue. If he said that it wasn't the Emperor who took the princess away, he would not believe it. This was clearly the other courtyard of the royal palace, it was one of the Emperor's favorite places. There was a natural hot spring here and whenever the Emperor was in a mess, he liked to come here to soak in the hot spring. Jue Feng, if you say another word, do you believe that this king won't kill you? Chu Xiaobai said word for word. Jue Feng tightly closed his mouth. Chu Xiaobai looked up and took a deep look at the other courtyard. His heart was sour, filled with sorrow and filled with bitterness. He did not say a single word as he turned to leave. Your Highness. Jue Feng wanted to call out to him, but he only said 2 words before closing his mouth. He couldn't help secretly blaming the Emperor in his heart. Master, if you want to play tricks on King Jing'an, you shouldn't lie to this subordinate as well. This subordinate has always been loyal to you, never having second thoughts. Playing tricks on this subordinate like this, is that really good? No wonder Chu Xiaobai was so angry that his nose became crooked and he waved his sleeve to leave. Even his heart was filled with anger and injustice. He stared at him and also wanted to leave, but thinking about it, he couldn't leave. Even if his master played tricks on him 100 times, he was still his master and he was his master's secret guard. Wherever his master was, he would be there. Jue Feng gave a sigh and jumped over the wall in resignation. Who would have thought that before his feet touched the ground, he would suddenly feel danger coming from the shadows. This is bad. His heart went on high alert and he wanted to dodge, but it was too late. He felt several cold fingers grabbing his neck, making it hard for him to breathe. The fingers heavily poked his body and he could not move at all. Damn of him, he had been ambushed. Jue Feng's heart was filled with anger and anxiety. He forcefully opened his eyes, wanting to see who the person sneak attacking him was. He only saw a tall man in black with a large black cloak draped over him from head to toe. In addition, in the dark night, he couldn't see the man's face at all. He could only see a pair of gleaming, cold eyes. The pair of emotionless eyes looked at his face and then threw him into the corner like a piece of trash. The black cloak was like a butterfly in the dark night, fluttering a few times before disappearing in the direction of the backyard. Zhui Feng was furious, gritting his teeth as he cursed in his heart. Zoff! How dare you launch a sneak attack? What kind of hero are you? Unfortunately, his acupoints were sealed, so he couldn't say a single word. Chapter 592. This was because this courtyard was built in the forest on the outskirts and was built for this hot spring. Other than the emperor, only a few of the emperor's trusted aides knew about this place. There were no guards, maids, or eunuchs here because every time the emperor came here, he just wanted to have a quiet rest and did not like outsiders disturbing him. So Zhui Feng never would have dreamed that he would meet an enemy in his own territory. Enemy? That's right, this person was definitely an enemy, and Zhui Feng was sure that this black-clothed man was not the emperor. He had followed the emperor for many years, so he knew the emperor's body like the back of his hand. In terms of height, this black-clothed man was similar to the emperor, but his body was much taller. Moreover, his body temperature was very low. When those 5 fingers grabbed his neck, he almost thought they were the claws of a ghost, being bone-chilling. Zhui Feng fell to the ground. Although his body did not move, his mind was in a mess as all kinds of thoughts filled his mind. Who was this black-clothed man that suddenly made a move? Why did he want to restrain him? If he really was an enemy, why didn't he just kill him? If the princess consort was really brought here by the emperor, then where did this black-clothed man come from? He wouldn't be here to assassinate the emperor, right? Suddenly he thought of a large possibility. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't move his lips, he would have cried out in shock. Wrong. They were all wrong. The one who brought the princess consort was not the emperor, but rather this black-clothed man. He and King Jing'an were both wrong. Zhui Feng loudly shouted in his heart. When they saw the royal family's courtyard, they thought that this matter was related to the emperor. In fact, he had always been by the emperor's side, so he knew that the emperor did not have the time and would not be so bored as to play this kind of joke with King Jing'an. It was a pity that no matter how loud the voice in his heart was, Chu Xiaobai had already walked far away and could not hear it anymore. After the black-clothed man restrained Zhui Feng, he listened carefully. When he heard that there were no sounds outside, he immediately ran into the back courtyard. He seemed to be very familiar with the terrain here and quickly arrived in front of a tall wall of trees. There was a sulfuric smell in the air and steam was rising above the wall of trees. Behind it was a natural hot spring. He passed through the wall of trees and came to the side of the pool. On the stone bed by the side of the pool, there was a green-clothed young girl lying there. There were several peach blossom trees by the side of the pool and there were 2 lanterns hanging from the branches. The dim light of the lanterns shined onto the young girl's face. Her acupuncture point had been sealed by the black-clothed man and she could not move at all, but her clear eyes were wide open as she stared at the black-clothed man. On the stone bridge, this black-clothed man had suddenly appeared beside her, but she hadn't noticed him at all. She only felt a chill invading her body. Just as she shivered, she discovered that there was a cold arm around her waist. It was cold and hard as if it was carved from stone. Then her acupuncture points were sealed, and she fell into an icy embrace. Pah! The glass mirror slipped from her arms and fell to the ground. Chapter 593. The black-clothed man suddenly came and suddenly left. The entire process happened in the blink of an eye, so no one noticed it at all. Even Chu Xiaobai, who was not far away from the stone bridge, did not hear anything. When the mirror fell to the ground, the surrounding citizens erupted into thunderous cheers. Chen Ning was held in the black-clothed man's embrace and she could feel a chill coming from the man's body, making her teeth chatter. But the man's running speed was faster than a galloping horse. He was steady and fast, so she did not feel any shock at all. However, her entire body was covered by a black cloak, and her vision was pitch black. She had no idea where this mysterious person was taking her, nor what his purpose was. She could only judge one thing. The person holding her was a tall and burly man and his body temperature was very low, completely surpassing a normal person's body temperature. After an unknown amount of time, the black-clothed man finally stopped. She could smell the familiar smell of sulfur. Then her eyes suddenly lit up. The black-clothed man shook off his cloak and placed her on a stone couch. She turned her eyes and looked at the familiar scenery in front of her. There was a familiar smell in the air and she knew where she was. This was the palace courtyard that Mo Chuan had brought her to before. But this black-clothed man was definitely not Mo Chuan. Why did he bring her here? Who was he? The black-clothed man took off his cloak, revealing a black, tight-fitting outfit that made his figure even more muscular and beautiful. The dim red light shone on his face, revealing his chiseled facial features. He had a pair of eyes that were as sharp as an eagle's. When he looked at people, his gaze was cold and fierce, but his body also carried a free and unrestrained aura. When people saw him, they would think of a handsome eagle soaring in the sky. This was a man like an eagle, but he was also a complete stranger. Chen Ning was certain that she had never seen him before. As long as she had seen a person once, she would never forget them. The black-clothed man stood in front of her, looking down at her. His eagle eyes did not even blink. Her eyes were clear and bright, like a clear spring. When they looked at each other, he could almost see his own reflection in her eyes. He had kidnapped her like this. If it was another girl, they would have already fainted from fright, but he did not see a single trace of fear on her face. Her eyes were still as beautiful as the first time he saw them. The black-clothed man rubbed his chin and looked over her. This girl was too strange. She was as delicate as a flower that could be blown away by the wind, but the feeling she gave him was like a bamboo that could not be bent. Interesting, truly interesting. He tilted his head and thought for a bit before releasing her acupuncture point. Hey little girl, why aren't you afraid of me? He deliberately opened his eyes and revealed a fierce look. In reality, even when he didn't speak or move, his body still carried a piercingly cold aura that would make people shudder. Everyone who saw him didn't dare to look directly into his eyes. They couldn't help but lower their heads and shiver in front of him. This girl was an exception. After he asked of his mind, he was looking at her eyes. Chapter 594. She only glanced at him with her clear, black eyes and then closed them. The black-clothed man was stunned. He thought that she did not understand his words, so he loudly said it again. This feeling of being ignored made him feel very uncomfortable. What he did not know was that Chen Ning was too lazy to reply to this kind of pointless question. She only needed to look at the black-clothed man to know that he did not have any killing intent towards her. His eyes were filled with curiosity and interest. She closed her eyes and quickly thought of a way to escape. She had already guessed this mysterious man's identity, but she did not know why he would kidnap her and bring her to this place. Who are you? Why did you bring me here? What is your goal? What do you want? Chen Ning suddenly opened her eyes. With a clear voice, she asked a series of questions. The man was stunned for a second before revealing a smile. He revealed a row of snow-white teeth that contrasted with his light wheat-colored skin, making him look very dazzling and beautiful. His facial features were cold and hard, but when he smiled, the lines of his face became gentle. It made people's eyes light up as if they were looking at the clear sky or the sun rising over the prairies. His smile was bright and straightforward. It was like he was a completely different person from when he didn't smile. This was the first time Chen Ning had seen a person change this much just because of a smile. It was a pity that his smile only lasted for a few seconds before disappearing. He quickly began to take off his clothes. Chen Ning was stunned. What did he want to do? The man in black quickly took off his black tight-fitting shirt, revealing his muscular arms. On his sturdy chest, there was an indigo tattoo of a majestic goshawk, spreading its wings and flying. After taking off his shirt, he took off his belt and took off his pants. Chen Ning's acupuncture point had been sealed, so the only things she could move were her eyes and mouth. Rogue! She secretly cursed in her heart. She tightly closed her eyes and mouth, but her heart was in her throat. She heard a plop sound and then warm water splashed onto her face. The man had actually jumped into the hot spring pool. She finally understood that he was taking off his clothes to jump into the hot spring to take a bath. Miss, the water here is very warm. Do you want to take a bath together? The man poked his head out of the water, revealing a pair of sparkling eyes. His eyes were still sharp, but his expression was very satisfied. He tilted his head back and leaned against the edge of the hot spring. His entire body was submerged in the water, only revealing a deep face above the water. Chen Ning did not even look at him. She thought that at this time, Xiao Bai would definitely discover that she was missing. He would definitely be looking for her everywhere. However, he would never have thought that she would be kidnapped here. That's right, Jue Feng. He would definitely find Jue Feng to look for her whereabouts. But could Jue Feng find her? She faintly felt a trace of hope. Although this black-clothed man did not have any killing intent towards her, it did not mean that he had any good intentions towards her. That man did not get Chen Ning's reply, but he was not angry. He opened his throat and began to sing. It was very clear that his mood was very good and he was very relaxed. His voice was deep and powerful, with an indescribable magnetism to it. The melody of the song was very beautiful, but Qin Ning could not understand the meaning of the lyrics. Chapter 595. In the endless blue sky, there was an eagle flying. Its chest was filled with ambition and hope, longing to charge into the sun. She had never heard such a primitive, natural and vivid song. The beautiful song made the night sky light up. Unknowingly she was lost in thought. Her heart also flew to the grassland and soared together with the goshawk. "Is my song good, Un?" The man's voice suddenly rang in her ear. It was so close that his hot breath blew directly into her ear, causing her to feel a chill down her spine. She abruptly opened her eyes, and what she saw was a pair of enlarged, bright and piercing black eyes. His eyes were wild and sharp, with a trace of pride and wildness. He was like a cheetah in the forest, his body releasing a dangerous aura. Qin Ning found out that she had fallen into a daze listening to his song. She didn't even know when he came out of the pool, when he put on his clothes, or when he came to her side. She didn't want to answer his question, but after thinking about it, she seriously replied, "Your song is very good. Although I don't understand the meaning of the lyrics, I can see the sun on the prairie and the eagle flying in the sky." The man's eyes lit up and he opened his mouth again. He gave a clear laugh and the sharp haze in his eyes disappeared. "You actually understood it? Aha, good, very good. I'm very happy." He sat down in front of her and said with a smile, "I'll sing another song for you." After saying this, he did not wait for her to speak before he began to sing. This time his voice was completely different from last time. It was deeper than last time, but also gentler and more beautiful. It was as if he was whispering and murmuring. The whole tune was filled with a lingering feeling that could seep into one's bones. It was lingering and mellow, causing one to be involuntarily intoxicated. She listened for a while and felt her heart speed up. Her cheeks unknowingly turned red. Every word of this song was filled with affection. Could it be that he was pouring out his heart to her? But she did not know him at all. As the man sang, he slowly approached her. He stared at her without blinking and saw a faint blush appear on her face. His eyes became gentle and intoxicated, and he no longer had that sense of strangeness and alienation. He couldn't help feeling proud in his heart. It had to be known that he was famous for his golden voice. His singing could be considered one of the best in the world, but there were very few people that could hear him sing. The love song he sang was filled with sorrow, enough to move the heart of any girl in the world. There had never been an exception, never. So he had absolute confidence that he could make this girl in front of him infatuated with him. His mouth was singing a gentle love song and his face revealed a look of longing. His eyes were filled with passion as he slowly moved closer to her and touched her face. "Be my woman." His deep voice sounded like he was singing a love song. The surroundings were so quiet. The wind blew gently, and the petals that were blown down slowly floated in the air. They slowly fell into the pond and landed on the bodies of the two people, bringing with them bursts of fragrance. Qin Ning suddenly opened her eyes. Her eyes were as clear as water, bright and clear, instantly looking into his eyes. Chapter 596. The man's smile froze in his eyes. His eyes turned sharp and he said in a sharp voice, "What did you say? What crown prince?" Qin Ning coldly looked at him. She put away her smile and closed her eyes. The man's large hand grabbed her chin and he shouted again, "What do you know? Who are you?" She opened her eyes and looked right at him. "Your Highness, we meet again. Although you were masked last time, I knew it was you. Honest people don't do shady things, so since I recognized you, why don't you have the courage to admit it? Could it be that the Yixing Crown Prince is famous, but you don't even have the courage to admit your identity?" The man was stunned by her words. He raised his thick eyebrows, and a sharp sense of danger enveloped her body once again. "You really are bold. Are you not afraid of this prince silencing you?" He said in a deep voice as killing intent flashed in his eyes. "Of course I'm not afraid," she casually replied. He was stunned. "What did you say? You're not afraid? Do you really think this prince doesn't dare kill you? Let me tell you, this prince is not a person who has tender feelings for the fairer sex." His fingers slowly moved down and fell onto her slender neck, slowly tightening. She directly closed her eyes and did not say another word. The Yixing Crown Prince was stunned again. He indeed had killing intent towards her, but he did not want to kill her immediately. It was like a cat catching a mouse. If he didn't play to his heart's content, how could he bear to let her die like this? But he found that she was not afraid of death at all and was not afraid of him. It wasn't that Qin Ning was not afraid of death, but she would rather die than be humiliated by this man. "As long as you tell me how you recognized this prince, This prince won't kill you. I'll forgive you and let you go. The East Qin Crown Prince slowly released his fingers from her neck. Will your highness keep your words? She raised her eyelashes. This prince's words are as good as gold. Then unseal my acupuncture point first and I'll tell you. All right. He was very straightforward as he directly unsealed her acupuncture point. She was a weak little girl who did not know martial arts, so she could not escape his palm no matter what. But since he could think of it, Qianning could also think of it. She knew that she could not escape, but she did not want to lie there like a cripple, being bullied by others. Once her acupuncture point was unsealed, she immediately sat up and moved a bit further away from the East Qin Crown Prince. The East Qin Crown Prince revealed a smile, revealing his white teeth. He was laughing at her unnecessary actions. If he wanted to use force on her, why did he have to wait until now? He could do whatever he wanted. However, he was proud of his identity and was never willing to force others. This kind of thing would only be fun if the other party was willing. The first time I saw you, I knew you weren't a West Chu citizen because the first thing you said when you saw me was Kubasimilit. That was your first reaction and you spoke the language you were most familiar with. If my guess isn't wrong, you spoke the East Qin language and your next words were, "Tell me, who are you?" Although you immediately changed and spoke in West Country, I say I. Qianning looked at him and spoke in a calm voice. Chapter 597. I know you still want to ask me how I know the masked person was you. I think your highness will not forget that I bit your finger that day. It was in this position. Your highness also has this wound on your finger. It can't be a coincidence, right? Qianning's eyes swept over his finger. That's not a coincidence, right? Qianning's eyes swept over his finger. Your eyes are quite powerful. The East Qin Crown Prince did not deny it. The other reason is that I know the East Qin envoys have arrived in the capital and the two songs your highness sang just now were clearly not songs from my West Chu country. The first song was about the vastness of the prairies and only those who have personally seen the prairies and live in the prairies can understand the meaning of the sky being vast and the grass being blown by the wind. East Qin is a country of the prairies, so if I couldn't guess your identity after hearing this song, wouldn't I be too stupid? The East Qin Crown Prince couldn't help nodding and saying, "That's right, you are indeed smarter than normal people, but you can only guess that I am from the East Qin country. How did you know that I am the Crown Prince? Could it be that your West Chu already knew that this Crown Prince would come to the capital?" His eyes filled with killing intent once again. How is this hard to guess? Although I am only a little girl, I have heard of your highness' illustrious name. There were East Qin people kidnapping young girls under the stone bridge. It seems like your highness purposely ordered them to do that, right? Their goal was to draw people away from me, giving your highness the chance. If you weren't the Crown Prince, how could those people listen to you? Qianning said in a calm voice. That's not certain. I am not the Crown Prince. I can be the leader of the envoys and they will still listen to my orders. His eyes sparkled. He didn't expect her to be smarter than he thought. Is that so? According to what I know, the East Qin country respects the eagle and all the royal disciples will have an eagle tattoo on their chest. As everyone knows, the East Qin emperor only has a single prince and he has been titled the Crown Prince since he was 7. If you are not the Crown Prince, where did the eagle tattoo on your chest come from? I believe that in the entire East Qin country, there is no one that dares to tattoo the royal family symbol on their chest. Your Highness, are you satisfied with what I've said? After Qianning said this, she stood up and moved her stiff limbs. She took 2 steps before turning around and saying, Your Highness, can I leave now? The East Qin Crown Prince suddenly jumped up from the ground and stood in front of her. His tall body blocked the light from the lantern above his head, covering her in a dark shadow. No, you can't. Who would have thought that His Highness the Crown Prince would actually be a person who doesn't keep his words? This Crown Prince is a man of his words. If I say I'll let you go, then I'll let you go. However, this Crown Prince never promised to let you go immediately. The East Qin Crown Prince placed his hands on his hips and his eyes revealed a sly smile. The East Qin Crown Prince placed his hands on his waist and revealed a smile. Qin. You are indeed smart, the smartest woman I have ever seen in my life. Do you think this prince will let you go? He revealed a proud smile. It was an arrogant and wild smile, a smile without any fear. He looked at her condescendingly, as if he was looking at a little white rabbit that had fallen into the claws of a wolf. His interest in her grew stronger and stronger. Chapter 598. This was the first time he had seen this kind of smart and beautiful girl. If he let her go like this, then he would not be the smartest person in the world but rather the biggest idiot in the world. This prince still plans on making you my woman. He narrowed his eyes and prepared to see her flustered appearance. It would be as cute as an angry kitten. Ning looked up and looked right into his eyes. That pair of eagle-like eyes, sharp and sharp. I think your highness has fallen for me, right? I think I need to tell your highness that I am already married. She softly said. Oh, already married? Does that mean you have a husband? Is it the black-clothed man that wanted to kill me that day or the white-clothed brat tonight? Or is it both? The East Qing crown prince said with a grin, looking like he didn't care at all. Ning bit her lips. This East Qing crown prince was even harder to deal with than she had imagined. Wasn't he the respected crown prince of a country? How could his face be this thick? Little girl, so what if you're already married? Our East Qing country is not like your West Chu country that cares about those broken rules. In our East Qing country, we rely on strength and fists to speak. No matter which woman it is, as long as a man likes her, it doesn't matter if she's married or not. As long as your fist is hard, you can take her over. Tell this prince just who is your husband. This prince wants to compete with him. If he loses to this prince, then you will be mine. The East Qing crown prince patted his thick chest, showing off his strength. He indeed had the capital and qualifications to be proud because in the entire East Qing country, there was no one that was his match. Your Highness, this is West Chu, not East Qing. Ning said in a sarcastic voice. So what if it's West Chu? Aren't you still defeated by our East Qing? Little girl, you still don't know, but even your country's emperor has to be polite and respectful when he sees this prince. If he knew that this prince liked a girl from your West Chu country, he would be overjoyed. He would immediately give you a decree to this prince. But this prince is willing to give you a chance to show your face. I'm willing to have a fair fight with your man in front of everyone and take you from his hands. However, your West Chu men are all as weak as chickens. Not a single one is this prince's match. So, you will be this prince's woman sooner or later. How about you give yourself to this prince now? His eyes lit up as if there was an endless amount of energy that he wanted to release. He suddenly grabbed her hand and pulled her into his embrace. She couldn't help falling into his embrace. The East Qing crown prince broke out in laughter as he picked her up and said, "This is a good place. It's quiet and there's no one around. There definitely won't be anyone disturbing the matter between you and this prince." Wu, there was an annoying fellow following us, but he was still sent away by this prince. Ning's heart skipped a beat and she pretended she didn't care as she asked, "West of this prince?" Chen's heart. Of that of Mo of this. She silently let the East Qing crown prince hug her without struggling because she knew that the more she struggled, the more it would stimulate this man's desire to conquer. Chapter 599. That's right, could it be that he is also your little lover? There really are a lot of wasps in the fragrance of flowers, one or two of them are really annoying. But they are not this prince's match. The East Qing crown prince carried her as he walked away from the hot spring. He knew that there were several warm rooms on the side that were beautifully decorated, but no one came here. So, he openly took this place as his own, treating it like his own home and staying here. Wait a minute. Ning suddenly spoke up. She knew what he wanted to do. If he carried her into the room, she would be a bird in a cage, unable to escape. What? You don't like entering the room? You like staying here? Ha ha, sleeping on the ground, this prince likes it. He looked up with a laugh. Ning's face couldn't help turning red as she scolded, "Rogue! Lu Ho? This prince already told you last time, my surname is not Lu and I'm not called Lu Ho. Wu, you still don't know this prince's name, right? I am called Na Mu Kuo. This prince likes you and is willing to give you a special honor. You can call this prince Akuo." He revealed a toothy smile. His snow-white teeth shined under the starlight, like a wild beast baring its fangs. Namu Kuo? Akuo? This person really lived up to his name. He was completely wrong. "Ke Akuo, I want to see him," she said straightforwardly. He smiled. He liked her straightforward personality, just like the girls of their East Qing country. He originally only had a 30% interest in her, but now it had increased to 50%. "Who do you want to see? Your little lover? Alright, this prince is in a good mood today, so I'll let you see him. But you can't go with him, otherwise this prince will kill him." "Alright, I won't go with him. Put me down first." Namu Kuo put her down and placed his two large hands on her shoulders. He leaned over and said with a smile, "Are you starting to like me? Do you like my people? Or my songs? Also, my face is not bad, right?" She almost couldn't help laughing at his smug, arrogant look. This was the first time she had seen someone as narcissistic as him. He was born with a golden spoon in his mouth and had a noble status. Adding in his intelligence, he had never met any setbacks before. When everyone saw him, other than flattering him, they would do everything they could to please him, so he had this kind of personality. If I tell you that I don't like you at all, I don't like you, I don't like your songs, and I don't like your face, will you let me go? She looked at him in a serious manner. What? You don't like me? How is that possible? Which part of this prince cannot compare to your little lover? Namu Kyo stared at her in disbelief and gritted his teeth. All right, just you wait, I'll bring him to see you now. I'll beat him until he begs for mercy in front of you. Ki. Very soon she heard a voice scolding, You're despicable and shameless. What kind of hero are you to launch a sneak attack? If you have the guts, fight me fair and square. It was Jue Feng, not Mo Chuan. She bit her lips and thought this was bad. If even Jue Feng fell into Namu Kyo's hands, who would report this to Mo Chuan? Chapter 600. Namu Kyo said with a smile, This brat's martial arts aren't that great, but his mouth is quite strong. His curses are very unpleasant to hear. His throwing technique was very clever. Jue Feng's back fell to the ground and he only felt a bit of pain before he could move his limbs again. Jue Feng jumped up like a fish and looked at Namu Kyo with eyes filled with shock. He had always thought that the other side had launched a sneak attack, but who would have thought that Namu Kyo's martial arts would be so profound? He knew that he would never be able to do such a thing. Hey brat, who are you to her? Husband? Or lover? Namu Kyo pointed at Ning and asked in a loud voice. Jue Feng's face couldn't help turning red as he angrily said, What nonsense are you saying? I'm not anyone. What, you're not a person? Namu Kyo stared at him and broke out in laughter. Jue Feng's face turned red to his ears. My meaning is that I'm not her husband or lover. How could he have the courage to have ideas about his master's beloved girl? Namu Kyo stopped laughing and looked at him with a suspicious gaze. Then you secretly admire her? Not at all. Jue Feng angrily said. He found that he was not this man's match, but the princess was in his hands. What should he do? Should he charge forward and fight to the death with this man to let the princess escape? Or should he find a chance to steal her and then report to the emperor? He couldn't make up his mind. Hey stinky brat, your eyes are moving around, it's clear you have bad intentions. Don't think you can trick me. Namu Kyo reached out with a large palm and his body moved forward, suddenly pressing down on Jue Feng's shoulder. Jue Feng's shoulder shrank back and he barely dodged this grab. His right hand reached out to his waist and there was already a silver snake-like whip in his hand. This was his weapon, he didn't use it easily. At this time he knew that he had met a strong opponent, so how could he care about the rules of martial arts? The other side was this strong, so if he didn't use a weapon he would not be a match at all. He waved his silver whip and a strong gust of wind flew out at a tricky angle at Namu Kyo's face. Hey, insignificant skills, you actually have the face to take them out. Your whip is truly lacking, let me teach you what it means to be the ancestor of the whip. Namu Kyo said with a face full of disdain. Jue Feng suddenly felt the whip tighten as Namu Kyo tightly grabbed it. He was shocked and forcefully tried to pull it back, shouting, Let it! Namu Kyo smiled and said, Fine, I'll let you go, I'll return it to you. Jue Feng was using all his strength, but who would have thought that the other side would let go just like that? He used all his strength on himself and felt a pain in his chest like he had been hit by a large hammer. His throat felt sweet and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Silver light FLQO, Mu QO. Ling, and the T, comma, Mu QO Chu he saw and T. Fong of comma. Comma TT, of Emoziti of Zich of. Fong Muzi. Jue Feng's face turned red, filled with shame. Although he knew that he was not a match, he never thought that he would lose in a single move. Not only was he spitting out blood, he was also restrained by his own weapon to the point where he could not move. Chapter 601. Let go of me. No, let go of her. If you want to kill someone, then kill me. Let her go. Jue Feng steeled his heart and loudly said. He knew that his silver whip was made of gold and silver threads mixed with a special metal, so it was very tough. Even if he used his internal energy it would not break. Since he couldn't escape he would just die. He did not know where this black-clothed man in front of him had come from. Losing his life like this, it was truly unjust. Zai, are you an idiot brat? You can even say this kind of stupid words? Namu Kyo couldn't help shaking his head at him. He pulled Ning over and pointed at Jue Feng as he said, You like this kind of idiot? Do you think he's an idiot? Zhui Feng was filled with rage as the veins on his forehead popped out. He angrily roared out, "Are you even human? Do you know how to speak human words? You're the idiot. You're the idiot. If you're not an idiot, how could you say that kind of thing? Why would I keep you here? I'm not interested in men, I'm not interested in killing you, and I'm not interested in sleeping with you. I'll only tell you one thing, I like her and I want her. If you're not convinced, then fight with me again." Zhui Feng's face first turned red before turning purple. After he finished speaking, his entire face turned as black as a pot. You really are bold. Do you know who she is? She is. Before he could finish, Chen Ning took a step forward and cut him off. Zhui Feng, shut up. She turned around and said to Namu Kuo, "Ah Kuo, you've made a mistake. He is not my husband or my lover, he is only my guard." Namu Kuo stared into her eyes and said, "He is only a guard? You really don't like him?" "Of course I don't like him. I'm this smart and he's this stupid, how could I like him?" Chen Ning gave a cold smile to Zhui Feng. Zhui Feng's face turned green. Not bad, not bad. This kind of greenhorn, this kind of dumb brat, he doesn't have the qualifications to be your guard. Does this mean you're willing to be with me? He looked at her. She revealed a faint smile. There's nothing bad about being with you. Your singing is very good and your looks are also not bad. When Namu Kuo heard this, he couldn't help breaking out in laughter. Zhui Feng was so angry that his body trembled. He stared at Chen Ning, not daring to believe that this was the girl the emperor liked. She was actually smiling at the man who kidnapped her. He was even intimately calling him, "Ah Kuo." "Ape." He shouted with all his might, "Shin? You're shameless. You've let down the emperor." He abruptly shut his mouth. Chen Ning coldly looked at him. "I can do whatever I want, what does that have to do with you? Akuo, if he dares to curse me again, then use mud to block his mouth." Namu Kuo laughed even more happily, his eyes sparkling. "Ah good. Since he has nothing to do with you, I'll let him go." Chin him. He chin. She. Chin chin God he chin he chin I, chin, of him he. Hearing the sound of soft footsteps in the blink of an eye, he had already brought Chen Ning far away. Zhui Feng's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as his eyes turned blood red. He wished he could chase after them. He used all his strength to pull the silver whip on his body, but he could only hear a zing zing sound, but it did not break at all. Chapter 602. With no other choice, he could only curse loudly. Suddenly he heard the sound of wind like leaves falling to the ground. He knew that someone had come, but he thought that Namu Kuo had come back because of his cursing. "Bastard, bastard. Let go of father if you have the guts. Fight with father again. Father will beat you until your teeth fall to the ground." His cursing suddenly stopped and his eyes went wide. He looked at the man in front of him in a daze and said in a stuttering voice, "Jing Jing King Jing and you. Why are you here?" Under the moonlight, Chu Xiaobai's white robe fluttered in the wind. His face was as white as his clothes, making his eyes seem even darker. He did not say a word as he walked beside Zhui Feng and untied the silver whip binding him. "King Jing'an, don't worry about this subordinate. Quickly chase. Chase that man, he has taken the princess consort away." Zhui Feng anxiously shouted. Chu Xiaobai did not say a word. After untying the silver whip, he gave it to Zhui Feng and stood in place. "Did you hear what this subordinate said? There is a man that came out of nowhere that has taken the princess consort away. If we don't save her, she will definitely be." Zhui Feng thought of the way Namu Kuo looked at Chen Ning. He was a man so he could clearly see it. That was clearly a hungry wolf and the princess consort was a helpless and kind little lamb. He stopped and forcefully glared at Chu Xiaobai. "If your highness doesn't go save her, this subordinate will go." Zhui Feng stopped. Chu Xiaobai suddenly said. Zhui Feng turned around in a daze and stared at him. "Your highness, what are you saying? You don't need to chase. Even if you catch up, you won't be able to save her." Chu Xiaobai calmly looked at him. His voice was calm and his face was calm, without a trace of excitement or anger. Zhui Feng almost suspected that he was looking at another King Jing'an. He was just too calm. Did he not like the princess consort anymore? "Your highness, what do you mean? You won't save her and you won't let this subordinate save her. Do you want the princess consort to be humiliated by that man?" Zhui Feng said through gritted teeth. Chu Xiaobai could be ruthless but he couldn't. He had the emperor's orders so he had to chase after them no matter what. He began to walk away. "Zhui Feng, that person said you were stupid and he wasn't wrong. You really are stupid and stupid enough. Chu Xiaobai did not stop him and just spoke in a soft voice from behind him. Your Highness, this subordinate has never offended you, right? Is there a need to humiliate this subordinate like this? Zhui Feng suddenly turned around. Zhui Feng. Can't you see it? She deliberately left with him. Chu Xiaobai said. So, on purpose? Windchaser's eyes widened in disbelief. Chu Xiaobai nodded and revealed a faint bitter expression. That's right. Zhui Feng sucked in a cold breath and revealed a pained look. It can't be, right? How will this subordinate explain this to the emperor? This subordinate couldn't possibly tell the emperor that his beloved girl had a change of heart and left with another man, right? In a fit of anger, the emperor would definitely chop off this subordinate's head. The Princess Ai of Qin, Princess of King Wang. She is not worthy of His Majesty's deep affection for her. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a pa sound as Chu Xiaobai slapped his face. Chapter 603. If you dare say another bad word about her, this king will hit you again. Chu Xiaobai stared at him and said word for word. Zhui Feng trembled in anger as he shouted, Your Highness, she has a change of heart. She is willing to be with another man, but you're still protecting her like this? You say this subordinate is stupid, but this subordinate thinks you're the real stupid one. Chu Xiaobai angrily said, Who says she has a change of heart? Who says she is willing? It's what you just said. You wouldn't have immediately forgotten, right? When Chu Xiaobai heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He raised his hand and Zhui Feng immediately dodged, revealing a face of caution. He looked at Zhui Feng and asked in a serious voice, Zhui Feng, do you know why you followed the emperor for so many years, but you've always been a secret guard? Zhui Feng stuck out his chest as he replied, That's because the emperor trusts this subordinate. Chu Xiaobai shook his head and pointed at his temple as he said, It's because you don't understand this place, so even if the emperor wants to give you an important task, he doesn't trust you to do something too important. Zhui Feng said with a dark face, This subordinate is not stupid. This subordinate knows that your highness is calling this subordinate a fool. Aren't you stupid enough? You can't even see such an obvious fact? Do you know who the man that took her away is? How would this subordinate know who he is? This subordinate was sneak attacked by that bastard as soon as I came in. Could it be that your highness knows who he is? Zhui Feng angrily said. Of course I know. He is the East Qin Crown Prince Na Mu Qiu. Chu Xiaobai said word for word. Zhui Feng suddenly sucked in a breath and his eyes went wide as he said, He is the East Qin Crown Prince? He could not see it at all. Na Mu Qiu spoke very fluently in the West Chu language. He had exchanged several sentences with him, but he could not hear the foreign accent at all. Your Highness, how do you know? Chu Xiaobai couldn't help rolling his eyes at him and snappily saying, Of course I heard it with my ears. Do you think I'm like you, not looking at anything and just foolishly jumping into the wall with my eyes closed? What happened in the end? Did you fall into Na Mu Qiu's trap? Zhui Feng's face turned red and he said in a low voice, How do you know, Your Highness? Didn't you leave at that time? I left, but I came back because this king knew that the emperor would not play around with me, so I came back. When I arrived, I just happened to see the East Qin Crown Prince capturing a big idiot. Chu Xiaobai said with a serious expression. That's right. Zhui Feng's face turned red to his ears. Your Highness, don't humiliate this subordinate. Since you came at that time, why didn't you save this subordinate earlier? Could it be that the two of us together couldn't beat that Na Mu? Na Mu? Chu Xiaobai patted his shoulder and gave a sigh. His name is Na Mu Qiu. Remember, it's wrong, not right. Good, this subordinate will remember. Na Mu Qiu. Wang Ya, although his kung fu is high, if we fight him together we should be able to beat him, right? Qin, Feng, of, Na and Qin Na, for 4, Feng at, Feng. Harm her? In this world, she is the only person I will never harm. How could I harm her? Could it be that I am not sad seeing her being taken away? Chapter 604. Please forgive this subordinate's bad eyes, but this subordinate does not see any worry on your face. Since your highness is not worried about the princess consort's safety, this subordinate will report to the emperor. I believe the emperor will definitely save the princess consort from Na Mu Bu. No, Na Mu Qiu's hands. After Zhui Feng said this, he did not wait for Chu Xiaobai to speak. With a tap of his right foot, he flew over the wall and headed in the direction of the capital city. He flew out a mile before he heard the sound of clothes fluttering in the wind behind him. Looking back, he saw Chu Xiaobai following behind him, maintaining a distance of 3 steps. "Your Highness, why are you following this subordinate?" Zhui Feng said in a cold voice. "I am going to see the Emperor." Chu Xiaobai had an indifferent and calm expression on his face. "The Emperor does not want to see you right now, so you should wait until tomorrow morning to see the Emperor." Zhui Feng gave a snort as his heart was filled with disdain towards Chu Xiaobai. That night, Chu Xiaobai's words were very pleasant and moving. Even his heart made of stone had been softened by his true feelings. He said that as long as she was happy it was fine. He would be satisfied and happy. But in the blink of an eye, he had changed into a different person. Just because the person the princess consort liked was not him, but rather the emperor, he allowed the princess consort to be taken away by the foreign prince and did not save her. Was this still a man? He, Zhui Feng, truly had eyes but failed to see, treating this kind of scum as his brother. Zhui Feng's heart was filled with anger. He did not want to say a single word to Chu Xiaobai and did not want to look at him at all. He was looking down on him. "Your Highness, this subordinate has already said that the Emperor does not want to see you. Your Highness should not follow this subordinate anymore." Zhui Feng suddenly stopped and coldly looked at Chu Xiaobai. "Whether the Emperor wants to see this king or not, it is not up to a secret guard like you to decide." Chu Xiaobai's eyes were cold and his words were also very cold. "Tell this king where is the Emperor?" "This subordinate does not know," Zhui Feng weakly said. Chu Xiaobai did not say anything. He crossed his hands behind his back and calmly looked at him. Zhui Feng couldn't help secretly grinding his teeth. He knew that in terms of Qinggong, Chu Xiaobai was not inferior to him. It would not be easy for him to throw off this tail. But bring him to see the Emperor? He was going to report him to the Emperor. This matter of reporting him in front of Chu Xiaobai, how could he have the face to say it? "King Jing'an, please don't make things difficult for this subordinate." Zhui Feng's heart was filled with anxiety. If he delayed it any longer and the Emperor found the East Qing crown prince, it would be too late. If the princess consort was insulted by the East Qing crown prince, what face would Zhui Feng have to see the Emperor? He was the Emperor's secret guard and he couldn't even protect a girl from the Emperor. He was not even for the Emperor. He was have was not want. He was not. This king is not making things difficult for you. You are making things difficult for yourself. Zhui Feng could not understand what Chu Xiaobai was saying. "Your Highness, you know this subordinate's brain is stupid, can't you say it a bit more clearly? You don't want to save the princess consort because she doesn't like you, so you hate her, right? That's why you didn't save him, right?" Zhui Feng was a straightforward person. Whatever he thought in his heart, he would just say it. So in Zhui Feng's heart, I, Chu Xiaobai, am this kind of person. Chapter 605. Do you know how painful and uncomfortable it is for me to watch her being taken away by others? You will never know, Zhui Feng, because you are a piece of stone, a piece of wood. You have never understood what emotions are, you are just a puppet that only knows how to follow your master's orders. Chu Xiaobai grabbed the clothes on his chest. It was hard to endure the pain, but his face was still calm. He was in great pain, but he was not willing to let others see it because he was proud and he did not want to accept anyone's pitiful gaze. He was like a lonely and proud wolf. Once he was injured, he would find a place where no one was and lick his wounds by himself. But Zhui Feng's words were like pouring salt on his wounds. It was like digging out his wounds and forcefully cutting them twice, making him feel even more pain and even more injuries. "King Jing'an, this subordinate respects you as his highness, but if you keep insulting this subordinate will not be polite to you." As a secret guard, Zhui Feng hated hearing the words, marionette, the most. To a loyal secret guard, this was the biggest insult. Not polite. Could it be you are being polite to this king right now? Chu Xiaobai gave a cold laugh as his eyes filled with faint flames of anger. He had no way to vent the anger in his heart, especially when he saw Zhui Feng's annoying face. He just wanted to punch the other side's nose crooked. "Who?" Without saying another word, he sent a heavy punch at Zhui Feng's nose. Zhui Feng never thought that he would attack like this and that he would attack so quickly, so he quickly dodged. Although he was not hit in the nose, the wind from the punch brushed past his face, making his cheeks feel pain. It could be seen that Chu Xiaobai had used his true strength in this punch. "Your Highness, do you want to teach this subordinate a few martial arts moves?" Zhui Feng was also filled with anger. He already looked down on the other side's actions of leaving someone to die, but now he could not suppress the anger in his heart. He was secretly thinking that he would teach him a lesson for the Emperor and take revenge for the Emperor. Less nonsense. Watch this move. Chu Xiaobai charged forward and turned into a white blur. His fists flew out, each punch aimed at Zhui Feng's vital points, not showing any mercy at all. His heart was filled with depression and he wanted to vent it all with all his moves. In his eyes, the other side was not Zhui Feng, but rather Namu Kuo. Zhui Feng used his qinggong and dodged several dangerous moves. Although he was angry and wanted to teach the other side a lesson, the other side was still His Highness. Due to the difference in status, he did not make a move at all. But other than his qinggong, his fists, feet and hidden weapons were all inferior to Chu Xiaobai's. Adding in the fact that he did not fight back, he was at a disadvantage. Finally, he could not dodge in time and his chin was hit by Chu Xiaobai's fist. Ah! Your Highness, you of. Your Highness, you of attacks. Zhui Feng was in so much pain that tears came out. He gritted his teeth and began to counterattack. The two of them began to fight with a ping 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 sound. Zhui Feng's martial arts were on the same level. After fighting for an hour, there was no clear victor and both sides had taken quite a few kicks and punches from the other side. Only Zhui Feng remembered the other side's status as a prince. Even if the other side kicked his butt, he was too embarrassed to leave his muddy footprints on Chu Xiaobai's white robes. Chapter 606. I won't fight anymore. I won't fight anymore. This subordinate will admit defeat. Zhui Feng also jumped back. He was so tired that he was gasping for breath and couldn't catch his breath. Chu Xiaobai's body was also covered in sweat. After this hearty fight, the anger in both sides' hearts had disappeared quite a bit. Your Highness, this subordinate still needs to report to the Emperor. If you want to teach this subordinate a lesson, wait until next time. Zhui Feng thought of his mission and his heart was filled with regret. How could he not care about his priorities and fight with King Jing'an for no reason, wasting this much time? No wonder King Jing'an and Namu Kuo called him a fool. He really was a fool. He was filled with regret and shame. As he prepared to leave, Chu Xiaobai suddenly grabbed his arm and said in a deep voice, "She will be fine." "Oh, who won't be fine?" Zhui Feng was stunned, but then he reacted. He turned to look at Chu Xiaobai and said in a stunned voice, "You're saying that the princess consort won't be in danger?" Chu Xiaobai nodded and said, "Yes, she willingly left with Namu Kuo, so she has a way to protect herself. She won't let herself be in danger." Zhui Feng was stunned. He couldn't help digging his ears. "Your Highness, did this subordinate hear wrong?" "You didn't hear wrong." Chu Xiaobai softly said, "After your acupuncture point was sealed by Namu Kuo, I quietly snuck into the back courtyard and hid behind the tree wall. I wanted to find a chance to save her, but I found out that after she found out that the other side was the East Qing Crown Prince, her tone and attitude changed. She wanted to stay by his side." "What? She?" Her heart really changed. Zhui Feng's face fell and he said in a hateful voice, "Humph, this kind of girl is fickle." Seeing that the East Qing Crown Prince is handsome, has good martial arts, and has a noble identity, her heart changed. She actually completely forgot about the Emperor's kindness to her. "Your Highness, this kind of girl is not worth you and the Emperor treating her so well." He suddenly saw Chu Xiaobai's cold and angry eyes look at him and he swallowed the rest of his words back into his stomach. The slap he had suffered not long ago was still aching, but he steeled his heart and shouted, "Your Highness, even if you kill this subordinate will still say it. She is not a girl worth your love. Just let her and the East Qing Crown Prince be together. This subordinate will tell the Emperor she—" "Zhui Feng, shut up. You can't say a single bad word about her. She is not the kind of person you say she is. She is willing to take the risk to be with the East Qing Crown Prince. She is doing it for our West Chu." Chu Xiaobai couldn't help but blurt out. Chu Xiaochu couldn't help but blurt out. He wanted to keep this a secret, but he couldn't stand Zhui Feng slandering her like this and belittling her like this. Zhui Feng's chin fell down when he heard this. He tightly knit his brows and said in a slow voice, "Your Highness, you know this subordinate is a stupid person. Can you explain it clearly? What does this matter have to do with our West Chu? What's T2 and 3's competition?" Chu Xiaobai said in a deep voice, "Do you know who our West Chu will send to compete with the East Qing Crown Prince in reading the Steels 3 days from now?" Zhui Feng shook his head. "This subordinate doesn't know. Didn't the Emperor ask your Highness to invite an expert to help? Could it be your Highness did not manage to invite one?" "It's her." Chapter 607. Now that things had reached this point, if Zhui Feng still did not understand what was going on, his wooden head could be cut off and used as a chair. "Her? It's the princess consort?" Zhui Feng's mouth opened wide like a toad's and his eyes almost popped out. This This was simply too unbelievable. He never would have dreamed of it. The so-called knowing yourself and knowing your enemy, you can win 100 battles. Chu Xiaobai softly said. Zhui Feng completely understood this time. He suddenly slapped his forehead and said in a voice of realization, so it's like this. The princess consort is truly thoughtful, but isn't it too dangerous for her to do this? That Namu, right? No, Namu Kuo clearly has ill intentions towards the princess consort. The princess consort does not know martial arts and she is a weak girl, falling into the hands of the East Qing crown prince. This is bad, this is very bad. This subordinate will immediately report this matter to the emperor. Zhui Feng broke out in a cold sweat the more he thought about it. He admired Chen Ning's courage, but he was also worried for her. Your Highness, do you really believe that the princess consort has the ability to protect herself? Are you not worried for her at all? I believe in her. Chu Xiaobai firmly said. In this world he could not be the person she loved the most, but he was the person who understood her the most and the person who believed in her the most. It was because he understood her that he knew that once she made up her mind to do something, she would definitely complete it. Since she had decided to stay by Namu Kuo's side, all he could do was silently help her complete her wish and not obstruct her for his own selfish reasons. Even though his heart had been taken away by her, his chest was empty now, leaving only waves of pain that were more intense than the previous. How could he not be worried? Your Highness. Zhui Feng seemed like he understood something. He opened his mouth and wanted to comfort Chu Xiaobai, but he had no words to say. Then, what do we do now? Do we report this matter to the emperor? If the emperor finds out... Zhui Feng awkwardly scratched his head. He was worried that after the emperor found out, he would run to the guest palace to find the East Qing crown prince. Wouldn't that ruin the princess consort's plan? Just report it as it is. I believe the emperor will understand her good intentions. The emperor will understand. Chu Xiaobai softly said. He believed in her taste. The man whom she chose must have the same heart as her. Before he thought he was that lucky person, but it was too late. He had returned too late. Asterisk as Chu Xiaobai expected, Chen Ning had been deliberately taken away by Namu Kuo. Ever since she found out that Namu Kuo was the East Qing crown prince, she thought of a very risky plan. That was, she had to find a way to stay by Namu Kuo's side. There were still 3 days until the competition, but she knew nothing about the training of instant visual memory. And the only person who could help her learn this method was Namu Kuo. Her plan was very dangerous because she knew very little about Namu Kuo. She could only observe his expression, tone of voice, and body language to determine what kind of person he was. He was very aggressive, arrogant, and conceited. Although arrogant, he was also a little naive. He was like a vigorous cheetah, eyeing the prey that he was interested in. Chapter 608. Dealing with Namu Kuo was like standing on the tip of a knife, causing her to tense up at every moment. She did not know where Namu Kuo was taking her, but when she was in his embrace this time, she began to feel different. His body was no longer like a block of ice, rather he had the body temperature of a normal person. Why did this kind of change happen? Could it be because of the hot spring? She suddenly thought of the first time she saw him. It was at the same time that he suddenly appeared and jumped into the hot spring. But she did not have time to think about it. Namu Kuo stopped and took off the cloak covering her body, putting her down. Her eyes suddenly lit up. What is this place? She raised her eyes and looked around. This was a very beautifully decorated room. There was a thick wool carpet on the floor that was soft and warm to step on. There was a crystal bead curtain in front of her and there were exquisite copper lamps on the wall. When the light shined on the bead curtain, it gave off a dreamy glow. There was a low table on the carpet. There were no chairs, but there were many brocade cushions. The entire room was filled with a strong foreign style, very different from the West Chu style. This is a guest house, but this room is decorated according to our East Qing customs. Do you like it? Namu Kuo revealed a smile at her, revealing his snow-white teeth. His smile was filled with confidence because he could tell from her expression that she liked this place. He clapped his hands and a few servants walked in, carrying a large bathtub. The bathtub was steaming, and they walked into the quiet room behind the crystal bead curtain. Your Highness, everything has been prepared. The servants bowed to Namu Kuo. Namu Kuo nodded. Call the female slaves in. Very quickly, 4 female slaves came in with trays. There were clothes and towels on the trays and the room was filled with the fragrance of flowers, making people feel refreshed after smelling it. My little beauty, this was specially prepared for you. Go take a bath, you'll feel refreshed. He waved his hand and the female slaves escorted Qin Ning into the room without saying a word. Qin Ning bit her lower lip with her teeth and stared at the bathtub that was filled with steam. Did this mean that he wanted to wash her clean and give her a tribute? I won't wash. Don't touch me. The 4 female slaves came over to pull her clothes. She tried to block them, but the female slaves all knew martial arts and quickly pushed her into the bathtub. It was unknown what kind of spice was in the water, but it had a refreshing fragrance. It made her drowsy as she soaked in the warm water. Since she couldn't escape, she just relaxed herself and let the female slaves bathe her. When she came out of the bathtub, her skin was of a translucent crystal that was even more beautiful. Where are my clothes? She found that the clothes the female slaves gave her were not the ones she was wearing, rather it was a set of bright and beautiful East Qin clothes. The female slaves did not speak the East Qin language, so they gestured to her, meaning that her clothes had already been thrown away. Qin Ning was helpless and could only wear this set of clothes that was completely different from the West Chu style. Chapter 609. When she came out of the room, Namu Kuo was standing in front of the window looking out in a daze. When he heard her footsteps, he turned around. When he saw the new her, his eyes lit up. He smiled, revealing his white teeth, and walked up to her. You look really good in these clothes, just like a girl from our East Qin country. He stood 3 steps in front of her and looked her up and down, just like he was admiring a piece of art. Qin Ning pursed her lips and did not say a word, letting his eyes wander over her body. In his eyes, she was already prey in his claws that could not escape. He was just thinking of a way to eat her up. Sit, I've prepared the best food in our East Qin country for you. Namu Kuo had also changed into a new set of clothes. That tight cut made his figure look tall and straight. He stood straight and his chin was slightly raised, releasing a charm that made people hold their breath. He was just like an unruly wild horse, wild and enchanting. He smiled at her again. That smiling eyes were even darker than his hair. Qin Ning had already smelled the enticing smell of food in the air. She looked down and saw fruits and delicacies placed on the table. She sat down without any politeness and began to fill her stomach. Try this is something I specially ordered them to prepare for you. Namu Kuo sat cross-legged on the cushion in front of her and pushed a transparent crystal cup in front of her. Not bad, it's very delicious. Thank you for your highness' hospitality. The crystal cup was filled with snow-white pastries with a fragrant smell. She took a bite and found that it was very sweet, fragrant, and smooth. She also drank the liquid in the cup. It was cold and sweet, but she could not taste what it was. In fact, most of the food she ate she did not know what it was, but the taste was very delicious. I never thought that you would like our East Qin country's food. You are the first girl I've seen with such courage. Namu Kuo's eyes fell onto the plate that she had swept clean and he revealed a satisfied smile. Courage? Qin Ning asked in a strange voice, shouldn't you be praising my appetite? He revealed a smile and his eyes sparkled. Do you know what you just ate? He pointed at an empty plate. Not long ago there had been some roasted meat on the plate, but it had been eaten by her in a few bites. Roasted meat? She replied, feeling a bit unsatisfied. This is mountain bat meat. After he said that, he looked at her maliciously, waiting for her expression to change. Qin Ning blinked and said without changing her expression, the taste is delicious, but the amount is too little. Next time I ask your highness to tell your chef to make more. This time it was Namu Kuo's turn to be surprised. She was the first person he had met who knew that he had eaten mountain bat meat without batting an eyelid. Even among the East Qin girls, there were very few that were as bold as her. There were not many East Qin girls like her. This is vole meat, this is toad leg, this is... He pointed to the dishes on the table one by one, observing her expression as he spoke. He did not believe that her expression would not change. Qin Ning revealed a smile. They are all delicacies from the mountains. I must thank His Highness for his hospitality, allowing me to eat all these delicacies that I rarely eat. Namu Kuo couldn't help sweating. He had ordered people to do this, but he did not have any good intentions. He wanted to scare her, but he never thought that although this girl looked weak, her nerves would be even stronger than old bamboo. Chapter 610. Alright, since you've eaten your fill, we should talk about proper business. He clapped his hands and someone immediately came in to take away the plates on the table. They brought in 2 cups of hot tea and freshly cut fruits. This was clearly the etiquette for entertaining guests. Qin Ning raised her brows and calmly drank the tea. It was a bit salty and bitter, but it was fragrant and mellow, so she drank it all in one gulp. You're this confident in me, aren't you afraid this prince will drug the food at all? Namu Kuo calmly looked at her and said. Qin Ning revealed a faint smile and replied, I believe in your highness' character, you would never do this kind of despicable thing. What? If your highness wants a woman, you yourself are the best medicine, you don't need to drug the food at all. She calmly replied. Namu Kuo couldn't help breaking out in laughter as his eyes sparkled. You're praising this prince to my face. What, have you already discovered this prince's charm and have begun to like me? Qin Ning smiled without saying a word. I like hearing you speak. Your voice is even more beautiful than the nightingales on the prairies, your eyes are even more enchanting than the stars in the spring night, and your face is like an undying snow lotus on a snowy mountain, always so enchanting. As long as I look at you, it will make my heart feel peaceful. My little beauty, you've already used clean water to bathe yourself, so what you should do now is offer your holy body to this prince. Namu Kuo walked closer to her as he spoke. He reached out to lift her chin and looked into her enchanting eyes. His calloused fingers gently slid across her smooth face. Now is not the time, she calmly said. Then when is the time? This prince can tell you that in our East Qin, as long as this prince likes a woman, there has never been a woman that has been rejected by this prince. This prince is willing to have a woman, that is a blessing bestowed upon her. It's a pity that this is West Chu and not East Qin. I am a West Chu citizen, so I do not dare accept your highness' blessing. She said with a faint smile. Is that so? You keep rejecting this prince, is it because you don't like me? Or is it because of your identity that you don't dare accept me? His fingers, which were holding her chin, suddenly tightened. His hawk-like eyes stared at her, without the slightest hint of a smile in them. Qin Ning's heart skipped a beat, but her face was still calm. My identity, what identity? She blinked and said. You still want to hide it from me? Your husband is surnamed Chu and is called Chu Xiaoyang. He is the King Ding Yuan of West Chu, so you are the respected King Ding Yuan princess. Your husband is surnamed Chu and is called Chu Xiaoyang. He is the King Ding Yuan of the West Chu country, so you are the noble Ding Yuan princess. Princess, this prince is not wrong, right? He really did know her identity. Qin Ning revealed a faint smile and said, Your Highness is truly the smartest person in the world, being able to find out who I am in such a short amount of time. Admirable, admirable. She had only taken a shower, but his attitude towards her was completely different from before. This was indeed somewhat out of her expectations. Chapter 6:11. After saying this, he suddenly raised his brows and fiercely stared at her. His eyes revealed a fierce glow. Your Highness' question is very strange. I have never lied to you before and I have never played any tricks in front of you. Qin Ning had an innocent look on her face. Her eyes were black and bright with a calm look. I have already told your Highness that I have been married before. It was your Highness who said he didn't care at all, but you kept saying that you wanted to fight my husband. In the end, you forcefully took me away without asking me, but now you're saying that I deliberately approached you. Isn't this being wronged? You woman, you clearly have bad intentions towards this prince. Namu Kuo's face turned red from her questioning and he forcefully raised his chin. Qin Ning revealed a smile. Her smile made Namu Kuo even angrier. He stared at her, feeling like he had never seen through her before. The first time they met, he had been attracted by her pure and fairy-like beauty. When her dark and bright eyes looked at him, he felt like his chest had been hit by an arrow, making him feel sore and painful. He could not forget her, so he sent out a large amount of people at the Lantern Festival to search for beautiful girls, hoping to find her. In the end, he really did see her in the sea of people. This time, he did not hesitate to take her away. He thought that with his appearance, singing, and charm, he would be able to move her heart and make her willingly offer herself to him. But he found that not only was this girl beautiful, she was also smart. She had seen through his identity in an instant. He had wanted her to become one of his countless women. After he was tired of her, he would kill her. But a beautiful and smart girl was different. He was known as the smartest person in the world, so he liked to interact with smart people the most. He began to have a bit of interest in her. For this kind of smart girl, she would not be easily moved by him. It seemed like he needed to spend a bit more effort on her. This was because he had seen the two flower protectors beside her. In terms of appearance and martial arts, they were not below his, but he did not care. Everyone loved fragrant and beautiful flowers, but whether or not they could be picked depended on their own skill. During the time she went in to take a bath, he had already found out her background. Now he finally knew who his opponent was and who her husband was. This should be the other way around. The one with bad intentions is your highness, right? Ning asked back. Humph, sharp tongue. Take a look at what this is. Namu Kuo took out a yellow scroll from his chest and waved it in front of her. When Ning saw this, she instantly understood. This was the imperial decree that Chu Xiaobai had specially asked for her. She left in a hurry, so she didn't have time to put the imperial edict back in the room. She brought it with her. When she was bathing, the 4 female slaves took the clothes she took off. They said they threw it away, but in reality they gave it to Namu Kuo. This imperial edict was in her pocket and he took it out. He could speak the Westchu language fluently, so naturally he could read the Westchu language. As soon as he saw this imperial edict, he immediately became suspicious. Thus he sent someone to investigate and found out her identity. What is this? Could it be that your highness has never seen it before? This is an imperial edict. Ning calmly said. Chapter 6:12. If my guesses aren't wrong, I believe your highness has already seen the contents of this imperial edict. Since you've seen it, why are you asking me? Do you want me to translate it to you word for word? Ning blinked at him with a pair of innocent eyes. Namu Kuo stared at her, filled with anger. Did this girl's guts grow hair? How could she be this bold? He had clearly seen through her identity, but she still had a calm expression. Ning, do you think that this prince doesn't dare kill you? He angrily roared out. His right hand moved down and grabbed her slender neck. Of course your highness dares to kill me, but you can't kill me. Ning raised her head high up. There was no fear on her face and her eyes were as clear as water. What do you mean? Namu Kuo was stunned. Does your highness know who will be competing with you in reading the steles on horseback 3 days from now? Oh, it's me, she casually said. What? It's you? Namu Kuo was shocked, almost not daring to believe his ears. His eyes opened wide as he looked at Ning without blinking. He repeated himself, you're saying that your Westchu emperor has sent you to compete with this prince in reading the steles on horseback? That's right, it's me. Ning nodded. Impossible. He didn't even think before shaking his head. Although your Westchu men are all cowards, they shouldn't be afraid of a man. They actually sent a little girl to compete with this prince. Isn't this clearly not putting this prince in their eyes? Your highness, I believe that our Westchu emperor will not use the citizens' tribute to show his contempt for your highness. Since the emperor has sent me to compete, he believes that I can defeat your highness. You want to win against this prince? In your dreams. Namu Kuo looked at her like he was looking at a monster. You are indeed the smartest girl this prince has ever seen, but no matter how smart you are, you can't compare to this prince. Even if you practice for another 20 years, you can forget about winning against this prince. He said in a proud and conceited voice. But Ning knew that he had the capital to be proud and what he said was right. She indeed couldn't beat him right now. I know that I can't win against you, so I want your highness to teach me how to memorize the steles while running. She said in a calm voice, clearly enunciating each word. Namu Kuo couldn't help shaking his head and picking his ears. You want this prince to teach you? He almost broke out in laughter. This little girl was really too interesting. The words that came out of her mouth were simply whimsical and could not help but make people laugh. He was her opponent in the competition and she actually wanted him to teach her the secret? This was as funny as it could be. Ha 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 ha. He really couldn't hold it in as he broke out in laughter. After he finished laughing, he lowered his head and touched her soft face. With a smile, he said, if you agree to be this prince's woman and serve this prince to my satisfaction, perhaps this prince can consider your proposal. Sheet. Chint. Chin. Chin. T. Sheet. Teat by she turned his hand, she. Chapter 6:13. She pursed her lips and revealed a look of ridicule. Namu Kuo was filled with rage as he shouted, who says this prince is afraid of losing? Alright, I'll teach you. If you can't win against this prince in 3 days, you'll become the prince's woman. Do you dare agree? With how smart he was, how could he not hear that she was trying to provoke him? But even if he knew, he still couldn't swallow this. Not to mention that he was confident in his victory. So what if he told her the secret? If she wanted to learn it in 3 days, could she really beat him? That was purely a dream. Alright, I agree. Ning was waiting for him to say this. She immediately nodded and reached out a hand. I've heard that your East Qin country has a rule of clapping palms to make a vow. Do you dare clap 3 palms with me? Why wouldn't this prince dare? I'm afraid you'll go back on your word. Namu Kuo raised his right palm and clapped it 3 times with her. After the 3 palms clapped, he suddenly turned his palm and firmly grabbed her right hand. With a proud smile he said, "Little beauty, in 3 days you will be mine." Qinning said, "It's still too early to say this. Perhaps in 3 days it will be your highness who loses? Then what does your highness want to lose to me? I don't want your person." She pursed her lips into a smile after saying this and pulled her right hand back from his large palm. "This prince will definitely not lose. What if?" "There is definitely no what if," Namu Kuo confidently said. "Alright, since your highness is this confident, then if I really win against your highness I want to make a request. Does your highness dare to agree to it?" Namu Kuo knew that she was trying to provoke him again. He gave a conceited smile as he reached out to caress her cheek and said in a low voice, "That is an impossible matter, but this prince can promise you that I will make you lose convincingly. However, if you lose, no matter what this prince wants you to do, you will have to obediently listen to this prince's orders." Qinning took a step back and avoided his palm. "That's fine, but I hope that your highness can maintain your noble status before the competition. You are the Yixqing crown prince and I am the Westchu princess, so I hope that you can treat me with respect." "Treat me with respect? You're afraid that this prince will violate you? Ha ha, you don't have to worry about this prince will never force others. Otherwise, do you think you would still be standing here talking to this prince?" His eyes lit up and were filled with interest towards her. His eyes were filled with a faint glow. As a prince, he could have any woman he wanted, he would never lack women. However, he had never met a woman who could truly suit his heart. For her, he could wait for 3 days. "Your highness is a person who keeps his word, I believe you." She gave him a faint smile. "Kyo, call me Avov." He narrowed his eyes and looked at her beautiful smile. He suddenly regretted it. She was going to be his sooner or later. Why did he agree to wait for 3 more days? King of Yivovov. Chin of and of. Alright, you can call me whatever you want now. When you become this prince's woman, this prince wants you to call me 100 times a day. He looked up and gave a laugh as he walked towards the door. Wait. Chapter 6:14. Qinning rolled her eyes at him and snappily said, "I want to ask you, when will you start teaching me? If you want me to lose convincingly, then take out your true skills." The smile on Namu Kuo's face slowly disappeared and he stared at her. He could see that she was very serious. Didn't this mean that she wasn't playing hard to get with him? Was she really planning on beating him in that competition? He began to feel that this was unbelievable. The reason why he could have this pair of fiery golden eyes, other than his talent, he had worked hard every day for over 10 years. "You're serious?" he slowly said. "Of course, does your highness think I'm joking with you? This prince might as well tell you. Even if I tell you all the methods, you won't be able to learn them in 3 days. Even if you learn them, you can forget about beating this prince. Because it's something that's impossible to do. How would I know it's impossible if I don't try? I'm a person who likes to face difficulties head-on." She revealed a faint smile. Her smile was confident and her eyes were clear. A certain part of his heart suddenly trembled, as if he had been touched by her words, but there was nothing strange about it on his face. "Alright, then you can obediently sleep here. When this prince's mood is good, naturally I'll come and teach you. Let me tell you, don't even think about running away. You won't be able to run away because no one can escape from this prince's eyes. As for what happens to those that escape, do you want to know?" He slowly said. "What happens?" This prince will catch her and personally skin her. This prince's skinning skills are very good, so she won't die after being skinned. She will be like a bloody ball of meat that can run, move, and talk. You can't imagine how interesting that scene is." His eyes revealed a cruel glow, but his face revealed a smile. Qinning's back was covered in cold sweat and her breathing couldn't help becoming tight. She heard Namu Kuo continue to say, "Do you know why she ran away? Because she hooked up with another man behind this prince's back. Then this prince caught that man and stripped him of his clothes. He made him hug that ball of meat and tightly tied the 2 of them together. Didn't he like to hug this prince's woman? Then this prince will let them hug each other in death. Do you know what that man's expression was when he found out that the bloody meatball in his arms was his beloved and charming woman? His eyes popped out of his head in fear before he fainted." Namu Kuo said this and broke out in laughter again, but there was only anger in his laughter and no joy at all. Qinning suddenly shivered and shook her head as she said, "Don't say any more, don't say any more." "What, you don't dare?" "But this prince hasn't finished speaking yet. Do you know what?" This prince sent the two of them to the sky burial terrace and let the eagles in the sky eat their flesh, only leaving behind a few white bones. Tell me, isn't this prince very benevolent towards them? As soon as she thought of that scene, a chill ran down her spine again. Of course she had heard of the sky burial terrace, but she never thought that Namu Kyo would actually feed a living person to the vultures. Chapter 6:15. That's right, you are truly kind to them. You sent the two of them to heaven and now they are living together, never to be separated again, living happily ever after. Even if you want to threaten them, you can't do it. Chen Ning's heart was filled with disgust and her voice became filled with sarcasm. Namu Kyo's face instantly turned red and he angrily jumped up. He forcefully pointed at Chen Ning, being so angry that he couldn't say anything. You. He found that he was so smart, but he couldn't find the words to refute her. His chest swelled and tightened at the thought that there was some truth in what she said. Chen Ning looked at him and suddenly said, Your Highness, you must love that girl a lot, right? Is she the one in your heart? Namu Kyo wanted to say, What does it have to do with you? Why should this prince tell you? However, he couldn't help but nod his head. The past events of the past surged into his mind, causing his voice to become gloomy. That's right, she is this prince's most beloved girl. She is also the most beautiful girl in our East Qing country. She and I were childhood sweethearts and I already knew that when we grew up she would be my bride. I have been waiting for her to grow up, waiting for the day she marries me. Do you know how long I waited for her? He paused for a bit. Without waiting for Chen Ning to speak, he continued to say, I waited for her for an entire 18 years. On the day she finally turned 18, I proposed to her and she smiled shyly as she agreed. At that moment I felt that I was the happiest person in the world. But do you know what happened afterwards? Chen Ning did not say a word and just silently listened. She knew that Namu Kyo did not care about her reply. He had been suppressed for too long, he just wanted a pair of ears that could listen. On the night she agreed to my proposal, I was so happy that I couldn't sleep, so I ran under her window. I did not want to disturb her sleep, I just wanted to hear if she was calling my name in her sleep. If she wasn't asleep, I would sing to her under her window, singing until she fell asleep. In our East Qing country all the girls liked to listen to my singing, but I was only willing to sing to her. Every time she heard me sing, she would become very quiet. She would sit in front of me with her chin in her hands and those eyes that were brighter than the stars in the sky would look at me without blinking. She looked at my heart and my singing became even more touching and even more moving. At that time I really wanted to hug her and kiss her, but every time I wanted to do this she would stop me. She said that she was still young and wanted me to slowly wait for her to grow up. Namu Kyo's voice was deep and had a trace of magnetism. He had a beautiful voice that was like flowing water that lingered in her ears. She was entranced by his words. She didn't expect that this man who looked so aggressive would have such lingering and immature feelings of love. Chapter 6:16. It was like my acupuncture point had been poked and I just stood there. I heard a man's low voice ring out. He was panting as he said, Yili Xian, you are truly beautiful. Your body is even more enchanting than your face. I really want to die in your embrace and never get up again. I immediately recognized who this voice belonged to. He was called Kubu, my guard and my best brother. I grew up with him and Yili Xian, so he always knew that Yili Xian was my beloved girl. But now he was sleeping in Yili Xian's bed. When he said this, he thought of the past. The muscles on his face twisted and his handsome face became fierce and terrifying. Chen Ning said in a low voice, Her name is Yili Xian? And this name is truly beautiful. When she heard him talk about skinning people alive, she was filled with disgust towards him, but when she heard him talk about his past, it seemed like he wasn't a naturally vicious person. It seemed like he had been hurt in love, causing his mood to change like this. Namu Kyo did not look at her. His eyes looked out the window, falling into an unknown place. That's right, she is called Yili Xian. Her name is beautiful, but she is even more beautiful. As for her body, it was indeed beautiful beyond compare. Her skin was as white and smooth as milk, making it hard for people to let go after touching it. So, I racked my brain to think of a way to help her keep it. I skinned her. It was a whole piece of human skin that was very perfect. After all these years I have kept it well. Little beauty, do you want to see it? He suddenly turned around and revealed a strange smile at her. She instantly felt her blood run cold. It's her. Namu Kyo pointed at a lantern beside her and said in a soft voice. The lantern was as thin as a cicada's wing and there was a peerless beauty depicted on it. She was wearing a small embroidered hat with 2 black braids hanging down. She had a sweet smile and beautiful eyes, looking very beautiful. It was like a beautiful painting. Chen Ning couldn't help gently caressing the beauty's face and sincerely said, "She is truly beautiful." She found that she did not know what this lantern was made of. It was light and thin, like it was made of paper or leather. It was soft to the touch, just like a young girl's crystal clear skin. This is her skin? She suddenly came to her senses and suddenly took back her hand. Looking at the lantern, she felt her throat become dry and her fingers tremble. "You actually turned her skin into a lantern. You. How could you even do this kind of thing?" Even with her calm, her face couldn't help changing color and the hairs on her body stood up. Namu Kyo's deep black eyes looked at her and his lips slightly curled up, revealing his white teeth as he smiled. "Little beauty, you are finally afraid? Little beauty, you are. You don't have to be afraid. As long as you listen to me obediently, I will treat you very well. But if you don't listen, I will peel off your skin and make another lantern." Chen Ning bit her lips and her face turned as white as snow. She wasn't afraid of death, but the thought of being skinned alive and then made into lanterns made her feel nauseous. The food she had just eaten churned in her stomach, and she almost vomited it out. "Chen, after you discovered Ye Li Xian's affair, what happened to you?" She took a deep breath and asked. Chapter 617. I heard Namu Kyo's low and deep voice slowly ring out. Afterwards, I heard Ye Li Xian's voice. She said, "Good big brother, how much you love me, give it to me tonight. After tonight, I will marry him and I will become his woman." Her voice was still as sweet and moving as a heavenly bird, but my stomach was filled with pain because she was calling another man. She was calling him, "Good big brother." I couldn't hold back and placed my hand on the hilt of my knife. I wanted to jump through the window and stab them one by one, ending this pair of cheap people. Who would have thought that at this time I would hear Kubu say, "Ye Li Xian, you don't need to marry him. You are my woman, you can only marry me in this life." Ye Li Xian gave a low sigh and said, "I have no choice but to marry him. If I don't marry him, he will exterminate my father's tribe. I can't harm the lives of my entire tribe just for me." When he said this, he paused and his eyes fell onto the lantern. He looked at it in a daze as if his mind was immersed in the memories of the past. Chen Ning did not interrupt him. She was also looking at Ye Li Xian in the painting, thinking that the person she loved was not him. Kubu suddenly gave a cold laugh and said, "You don't need to be afraid, he won't live for long." Ye Li Xian was shocked and asked, "What did you say?" My heart was also shocked. I quickly held my breath and pricked up my ears to listen. Although the two of them did not hear a single word of my name, I knew that the him Kubu was talking about was definitely me. I heard Kubu proudly say, "Haven't you noticed any changes in him recently?" Ye Li Xian said, His face doesn't seem too good and he often shivers." I asked him what was wrong and he said that he was cold so he wanted to hug me. As long as he hugged me he wouldn't be cold. I thought that he wanted to get close to me so I ignored him and left. "Kubu, what did you do to him?" Kubu said, "Don't worry about that. As long as you patiently wait a few more days, he won't be able to threaten you or your tribe." Ye Li Xian said in a trembling voice, "You poisoned him? You gave him the angel's horn, right?" Kubu did not say anything else but he must have nodded. Hearing this, Chen Ning couldn't help letting out a soft cry, "The angel's horn?" Namu Kyo immediately turned to look at her and said in a low voice, "What, you've also heard of this poison before?" Chen Ning said in a low voice, "The angel's horn, the flower is pure white and it looks like a beautiful morning glory. The pollen contains a strong poison and it can pass through a person's skin. A person who is poisoned by this poison will feel colder and colder until their blood turns to ice. It is ranked 7th in the world's top 10 poisonous flowers." Namu Kyo muttered, Seventh in the world is already this powerful? That's right, it's this angel's horn." He pressed his right hand against the low table, his fingers almost digging into the hard surface, his knuckles cracking. Chen Ning finally understood why his body was as cold as ice and why he often soaked in hot springs. It was because the angel's horn had no antidote and only sulfur could slow down the spread of its poison. Chapter 618. Ye Li Xian gave a low cry and buried her face into Kubu's chest, clearly not having the face to see me. Kubu looked up at me and said in a trembling voice, "Master, I?" It was clear that he never thought that I would appear. I did not listen to him say a single word and directly sealed his acupuncture point before throwing him out the window. There was only me and Yili Xian left in the room. Her body that was as beautiful as a newborn baby appeared in front of me, looking strangely beautiful under the moonlight. This is the scene I yearned for. I have thought about her body for a long time and it was even more beautiful than I imagined. If it was normal times I would have already thrown myself at her, but there was no ripple in my heart at that time. I just stared at her without blinking. I wanted to see what kind of heart was hidden under that beautiful appearance of this woman. Yili Xian was first panicked before she looked up at me and said, "Ah Qo, I've let you down, kill me." She closed her eyes. I gave a cold laugh. "Do you think it's that easy if you want to die?" I pulled her up from the ground and roughly kneaded her body. Her skin was really soft, it was even smoother than milk. I used a lot of force and tears came out of her eyes from the pain, but she bit her lips and did not say a word. I said, "You never wanted me to touch you, did you? Why aren't you screaming when I touch you now? Scream for me." I used a lot of force and she gave a sharp cry. Her body trembled and tears came out of her beautiful eyes. I stared at her face and my heart did not have any pity at all. At this moment I knew that I hated her. How much I loved her in the past, how much I hate her now. When Ning heard this, her face couldn't help turning red. She covered her ears and said, "Don't say any more, I don't want to hear any more." She was thinking that if Yili Xian fell into his hands, what kind of good ending would she have? She did not want to listen to some inappropriate plot. Namu Qo did not care, he was already completely immersed in the past. Although Ning covered her ears, his voice still entered her ears word by word. Yili Xian suddenly threw herself into my embrace. She tightly hugged me and cried, "Ah Qo, I'll give myself to you. I beg you to spare my tribe, alright?" I looked at her and did not say a word. She stretched out her orchid-like arms around my neck and stood on her tiptoes to kiss me. If I didn't know about her and Kubu's matter, I would have fainted from excitement, but I just coldly looked at her. When her lips were about to touch mine, I suddenly pushed her away with a palm. She fell to the ground and looked at me in shock. I said, "Buli Xian you I'm Yili Bu Bu. You are not worthy of my pure feelings for you. Yili Xian, I want you to personally see how I kill people." I went over to grab her hair and dragged her out the door. There was already a large group of people gathered outside, all of them were Yili Xian's people. Chapter 619. The chief's head fell to the ground with his eyes still open. Yili Xian let out a scream of terror. I grabbed her with one hand and kept swinging the scimitar in my other hand. Heads flew into the air and my clothes were quickly soaked in blood. My eyes were red from killing and I did not let a single tribe member go. Even the newborn babies were cut in half by my scimitar. Finally, the world became silent. I turned around and looked at the naked man on the ground. I walked over to him step by step and the blood from the scimitar in my hand fell to the ground. Yili Xian had already fainted, but she suddenly woke up. She grabbed my arm and cried, "Ah Qo, I'm begging you, don't kill him. It's my fault, everything is my fault, it has nothing to do with him." I turned to look at her and asked with an expressionless face, "Your meaning is that you seduced him?" Yili Xian's face turned white and she bit her lips, not saying a word. Kubu shouted, "It was me who seduced her, kill me if you want to kill her. Don't touch her." I looked at him coldly. "Kubu, even though you're my guard, I've always treated you as my best brother. Why did you betray me and poison me?" When Namu Qo said this, his deep voice suddenly became sharp, like the scene of that day reappearing in front of his eyes. Ning couldn't help feeling a chill run down her body. She had been covering her ears, but she slowly lowered them at this time. She heard Namu Qo continue, "Kumu looked at my face filled with killing intent, but he did not reveal any fear. He loudly said, 'Because Yili Xian does not love you, the person she loves is me, not you.' But her father clearly knew this, but he still insisted on marrying her to you because you are the crown prince and I am only a guard. Because you can protect his tribe and his wealth, so he forcefully separated me and Yili Xian. So for the tribe, Yili Xian had no choice but to marry you. Namu Qo, you have always been high up, proud and conceited. You probably never thought that I am inferior to you in everything, but Yili Xian has fallen in love with me, ha 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 ha." He wildly laughed. I knew that he wanted to anger me and make me kill him with a single slash, but I would not fall for his trick. He stole my most beloved woman, how could I let him die so easily? Namu Qo turned around and stared at her. His wild eyes were filled with a tyrannical intent, making her back covered in a layer of cold sweat. I have already told you what happened next. I peeled Yili Xian's skin and made it into this lantern, so that she could always stay by my side. No matter where I go, I will always bring this lantern. As long as I see it, it is like seeing Yelisian and she will never betray me again. You said that I had sent them to heaven and that they were living a very happy life, but you don't know that Yelisian will not be able to go to heaven because she was not complete when she was sent to the sky burial platform. Her skin was left with me. So now she and Kubu are in heaven and one is in hell, they will never be together again. This is the end of my story. Little beauty, did you enjoy listening? Chapter 620. Qinning's heart turned cold. She looked away and did not look at him. In a cold voice she said, Your Highness, what is your goal in telling me your story? Namu Kuo said in a low voice, I don't know either. Perhaps this matter has been suppressed in my heart for too long, or perhaps you remind me of Yelisian because you have the same pair of eyes as her. The first time I saw you I almost mistook you for her. However, you are not Yelisian. Even if you want to become the second her, this prince will not give you this chance. He gritted his teeth, jumped up and walked out without looking back. When the door slammed shut and she could no longer hear his footsteps, Qinning finally let out a long sigh of relief. She felt her back covered in cold sweat. She knew Namu Kuo's story. Although it was bloody and cruel, every word was true. Especially when she saw that lantern, she felt her throat fill with nausea. Abnormal. This man's mind was already twisted to the point of being abnormal. She felt like she was crazy. She was actually this bold and wanted to make a deal with this man? Perhaps she would also end up like this lantern in the end. But she had no way out now. She could only grit her teeth and continue walking. She let out a sigh and blew out the candle in the lantern. She placed the lantern in the closet. If she had to face this kind of human skin lantern, she would not be able to sleep. After blowing out the lantern, she found that the sky outside was already bright. She had listened to Namu Kuo's story for over an hour. Namu Kuo had promised that he would not touch her for 3 days, so she was not worried that Namu Kuo would return. She laid down on the bed and closed her eyes, wanting to sleep. She wanted to recover her energy to deal with this difficult East Qin crown prince. But her mind was filled with thoughts. How could she sleep? Mo Chuan's figure appeared in her mind and then Chu Xiaobai appeared in her mind. They must know that she was missing and must be looking for her. That Zhui Feng who was as stupid as Xiao Ru, could he understand the meaning of her words? Could he bring news of her to Mo Chuan? She finally fell asleep and had a dream. In the dream, she seemed to see a beautiful young girl with a pair of beautiful large eyes that kept talking to her, but she couldn't hear a single word. What did you say? Big Count, I can't hear you. She loudly said to the young girl. The young girl's face suddenly revealed a look of shock as a large hand reached out and grabbed the young girl. A piece of human skin fell off and the young girl turned into a bloody mess, letting out a painful cry. She woke up with a start. Her face was covered in cold sweat. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw a tall and sturdy figure beside her. He was looking down at her with a pair of cheetah-like eyes that glowed faintly. Namu Kuo. She blurted out, not knowing if this was a dream or reality. He stared at her intently. Did you have a nightmare? He looked at her without turning. Chen what? In fact, he had been there for a long time. Before she woke up, he had been by her side watching over her. After she fell asleep, that pair of eyes that were almost the same as Yelisien's were covered by 2 long and dense eyelashes, but he was still enchanted by them. The dark and soft cloud-like hair fell on the pillow, reflecting her snow-white face, making her look very beautiful. Chapter 621. Seeing her wake up from her dream and open her eyes that were similar to Yelisien's, it made him fall into a daze. It was like he had returned to his youth when he was infatuated with Yelisien, making his voice unknowingly become gentle. Qinning wiped the cold sweat off her head with her sleeve. Thinking of the young girl in her dream, she said, I dreamed of Yelisien and saw you peel off her skin. She even said a few words to me. Is that so? Did Yelisien tell you in your dream? What did she say to you? Namu Kuo looked at her and said. She said, you are 100% a devil. She said word by word. Demon? That's right, I'm a demon. Then what is she? I thought she was a fairy from the heavens, but she was fooling around with my guards behind my back. She stepped on my pride and dignity. Everything I did was forced by her and Kubu. He gritted his teeth. Just because she and Kubu betrayed you, isn't it enough for you to kill the 2 of them? Why did you kill the lives of their entire clan, not even letting a newborn baby go? He coldly said, killing 2 people is not enough to vent this prince's anger. Since she dared to betray me, this prince will bury the lives of her entire clan with her. Everyone who betrays this prince will have the same ending. He coldly looked at her. Even you are not an exception. This prince is not your husband Chu Xiaoyang, but if you become my woman, I will not allow you to betray me in the slightest. You can only have me in your heart, and if you dare think of another man, I will personally dig out your heart and eat it bite by bite. Then I will kill the man in your heart and his entire clan. If he is the emperor, I will destroy his country." Qin Ning stared at him and her body turned cold. She slowly said, "Namu Kuo, you really know quite a bit." He revealed a smile, but that smile did not reach his eyes. His eyes were filled with a layer of ice. "I am the smartest person in the world. As long as I want to know something, there is nothing that can escape my eyes. So, don't ever think of lying to me. You know the result of lying to me, Now properly wash yourself, this prince will take you out." He clapped his hands and several female slaves came in. They were holding things to wash herself, preparing to help Qin Ning wash herself. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. "Where do you think this prince wants to take you? I remember that we had an agreement. I will stay here and you will teach me the way of learning." "Woman, you really are long-winded. This prince will give you half a cup of tea's time. If you haven't changed your clothes by then, this prince doesn't mind bringing you out in a disheveled state." After saying that, he strode away with large strides. He did what he said, and in half a cup of tea's time he came back. Qin Ning had already been changed into a new set of clothes by several female slaves. She did not care what these people gave her at all. She was only thinking about how to find Namu Kuo and obtain the secret technique as soon as possible. She raised her head and found that Namu Kuo's gaze on her had become intense and passionate. Her heart was shocked and she turned to look at herself in the mirror. Her eyes immediately lit up. Chapter 622. This set of East Qin clothes was very different from West Chu's, but it accentuated her small waist, making her look slender and beautiful. However, she seemed to have seen this outfit somewhere before. She also felt a sense of familiarity when she looked at herself in the mirror. That's right, it was Yi Xian. The Yi Xian on the human skin lantern was wearing the same set of clothes. No wonder she felt it was familiar. "Namu Kuo, what is the meaning of wearing her clothes on me? You want to use me as a substitute for Yi Xian, right?" Hearing Qin Ning's words, the female slaves all took in a cold breath. They were thinking that this girl actually dared to call the crown prince by his name. The crown prince would surely fly into a rage. Namu Kuo was not angry as he calmly said, "No one can replace Yi Xian. This prince just feels that you look good in this set of clothes. If you don't like it, I'll have them prepare a new one for you tomorrow. There's no time now, let's go." He went to pull her hand, but Qin Ning took a step back and said, "Your Highness." His eyes were filled with flames. "You won't even let this prince touch your hand? Don't forget, you are the one asking me for help." "Where are you taking me?" Long-winded. Namu Kuo was impatient. After saying these two words, he suddenly walked forward and grabbed her wrist, bringing her out of the room and out of the guest house. There was a four-horse carriage in front of the door, looking very noble and beautiful. The inside of the carriage was very comfortable, with a thick wool carpet, a low table, soft cushions, fruits and wine. He pulled her onto the carriage and said a few words to the driver in East Qin language. The driver shook the reins and whipped the horse, causing the carriage to quickly move. The two of them did not say a word. Qin Ning did not even look at him. She just looked at the scenery outside the window, feeling more relaxed than facing him. After hearing his story, she felt an indescribable pressure when she looked at him, making her chest feel stuffy. Especially when she thought about how he killed Yi Xian's entire clan and how he made her into a lantern. She just wanted to stay away from him. She began to realize that she had provoked a very dangerous person. "Why aren't you speaking? Has my story scared you and made you afraid? Are you afraid of me now?" Namu Kuo had been watching her the entire time, not missing a single expression on her face. He told her that story just to warn her, but seeing that she was really keeping a respectful distance from him made him feel very uncomfortable. She finally turned to look at him. It's not fear, it's disgust. Her honesty did not make him angry, but rather it made him laugh. He looked at her with eyes of admiration. "You are the first girl that dares say this kind of words in front of me. You are very bold and courageous, which is why this prince likes you. You don't just have a beautiful face, you also have a beautiful head." His eyes were filled with a strong aggression, as if she was a fish on a cage. She was a fish on a fish on a fish on a fish. She turned her head away and continued to look out the window, saying nothing. "What's so beautiful about the scenery outside that your gaze lingers on it like this? Could it be that this prince's face is not as beautiful as the scenery?" Chapter 623. She could feel him coming closer to her. An arm was placed on the wall of the carriage, trapping her in the crook of his arm. He did not touch her, but as long as she moved, she would fall into his embrace. This was a very ambiguous position. If it was between lovers, it would be very romantic, but the closer he came, the more disgusted she felt. Your Royal Highness, I hope you remember the 3 rules we agreed on. She looked up at his burning gaze. Of course this prince remembers. I will not force you, my little beauty, because I do not need to force others. I will wait for the day you fall in love with me and throw yourself into my embrace. He lowered his head and revealed a smile at her. She said in her heart, never. He still had a sunny smile on his face as he stared into her eyes. You still have another man in your heart, so you would rather jump off the carriage to your death than let me touch you, right? She did not say a word, but her expression explained everything. Namu Kuo released her arm and calmly said, after Ye Xian died, I have had many women and I found that no woman has ever rejected me. I did not need to smile at them, I did not need to please them, I did not need to sing love songs to them, and they would take the initiative to give their hearts to me. Each woman worships me like a god and they all did it willingly. Ye Xian was the only one who rejected me because the person she loved was not me. You are the second girl to reject me because the person you love is not me, so you can be assured that before you are willing, I will not touch you. If it's like this, then I thank you, she said in a low voice. He revealed a taunting smile. It sounds like you don't care about my love at all. Do you know that the more you reject me, the more interested I become? Because the easier it is to obtain something, the less valuable it is and the less I care about it. Do you know where the women that threw themselves into my embrace went in the end? You wouldn't have killed them all, right? Ha ha, it seems like my story last night left a deep shadow in your heart. This prince does not like killing people, especially the women that love me. I couldn't bear to kill them, but I also looked down on them. So when I was tired of their faces, I sent them to the army camp and gave them to my soldiers to enjoy. He broke out in a proud laugh. Chen Ning's body trembled and she forcefully bit her lips. Little beauty, you don't need to be afraid. This prince likes you and my interest in you is stronger than all of them combined. Before this prince can see what you are thinking in that beautiful little head of yours, this prince is not willing to give you to my rough subordinates. They don't know how to appreciate your beauty, they are only interested in your body. After he said this like nothing had happened, he picked up the fruits on the table and gave them to her. Try our East Qin country's fruits. Isn't it sweeter and more delicious than your West Chu country's? Isn't it sweeter and more delicious than your West Chu's? Just like our East Qin men, they are all brave warriors. I'm afraid you haven't tasted the taste of a real man, right? When you become my woman, I will make it so that you will never be willing to leave me. Chapter 624. Shameless. She angrily cursed out before turning her head to avoid the fruit he handed over. She turned a deaf ear to his words and did not even care about them. Namu Kuo revealed a proud smile. The angrier she was, the happier he was. On the way out of the city, the road became narrower and more rugged. In the end, the horse carriage could not move forward at all. Namu Kuo had the driver stop the carriage and wait in place. He pointed at a tall mountain in front of him and said to her, "Can you climb to the top of this mountain?" Chen Ning looked up and saw that the mountain was steep. The middle of the mountain was covered in layers of white mist and she could not see the peak. There were strange rocks everywhere and there was no path at all. Did you bring me out just to climb a mountain? This prince just wants to see if you have the qualifications to be this prince's disciple. You want this prince to teach you secret techniques. Alright, as long as you climb to the top of the mountain with your own strength, this prince will immediately teach it to you. He said. Your Highness, don't you think you are forcing me? She gritted her teeth. She did not have any climbing tools. If she were to climb the mountain like this and climb this kind of dangerous mountain, she would fall to her death before she could even climb halfway. He revealed a smile at her. It's fine if you don't want to climb. As long as you ask the prince to carry you up, this prince will carry you up the mountain. Once we reach the top, this prince will teach you. The mountain here was extremely steep, and the path he chose was even more difficult to traverse. There were many cliff-like stone walls in many places, and for an ordinary person who did not know Qigong, climbing to the top of the mountain on foot was almost as difficult as ascending to heaven. But for a Qigong expert like Namu Kuo, climbing to the top of the mountain was just a few breaths of time. He deliberately used this method to make it hard for her and then waited for her to beg him. Didn't you not let this prince touch you? This prince wants you to personally ask this prince to carry you. No need. Chen Ning looked up and looked at him, reading his thoughts with her eyes. He wanted her to admit defeat? No way. Wasn't it just climbing a mountain? She did not believe that she could not climb it. Although she did not know martial arts, she still had a foundation in martial arts and her body was stronger than normal people. Adding in the fact that Chu Xiaobai had taught her some Qigong, although they were all beginner level, they were very practical. Only she did not have time to practice it, so this was a good chance to practice it. As she silently recited the essentials of Qigong, she studied how to use it. Gradually, she understood it and actually figured out a lot of tricks. Her feet suddenly felt light, and her speed of climbing the mountain also increased a lot. Namu Kuo slowed down his footsteps and followed behind her, so that he could catch her if she fell. Seeing her clumsy movements, she was like a little duck that was learning to walk, swaying and almost falling several times, but before he could reach out to support her, she actually stood up on her own. Along the way, her clothes were all soaked in sweat and stuck tightly to her body. The embroidered hat on her head had been hooked away by a tree branch at some point. Her fair and tender face was covered in sweat and dust. She looked very disheveled. But her eyes shone brighter than ever. Chapter 625. Your Highness, you have to keep your word. I'm already standing on the top of the mountain, can you start teaching me now? Chen Ning used her tenacious willpower to finally reach the top of the mountain. She was already panting from exhaustion. Namu Kuo stood beside her. His face was not red and he was not out of breath. The clothes on his body were as clean as if he had just put them on. There was not even a speck of dust on them. At this time, the red sun was slowly setting in the west. The evening clouds were like a raging fire, dyeing half the sky red. It was very beautiful. Look. He pointed at the setting sun and only said a single word. Chen Ning looked at it a few times. She had to admit that the setting sun was very beautiful, but she had worked hard to climb the mountain, not to see the sunset. Is it beautiful? He asked. Beautiful my ass. She was so tired that she found a rock to sit down on. She was not even out of breath. How could she be in the mood to see the sunset? Your Highness, do you still keep your word? Observe. He simply said 2 words. Observe? Observe what? Namu Kuo. If you told me to climb up here to watch the sunset with you, then you can watch it by yourself. I'm not interested in this. Chen Ning felt like her lungs were about to explode from anger. While climbing up the mountain, she had encountered danger several times, almost falling down and bleeding. She never thought that after climbing up, he would be leisurely watching the sunset. The most beautiful scenery in this world is always fleeting, so whenever I see this kind of beautiful scenery, I can't help observing it. I want to remember this scene that changes in an instant. When I close my eyes, I can still clearly see the sunset and every change will clearly appear in my mind. Over time, I have developed this kind of habit. When I see the ebb and flow of the tide, when I see the sunrise and sunset, when I see the clouds in the desert, when I see the mirage, and even when I see the fireworks, I will observe and remember this fleeting beautiful moment. Namu Kuo did not turn around to look at Chen Ning. He had been looking at the setting sun on the horizon as he slowly spoke. His voice was beautiful and deep, like he was reciting a poem in a low voice. Chen Ning's heart skipped a beat and her eyes began to glow. She suddenly looked up and looked at the setting sun. The red sun quickly fell to the other side of the mountain. It was just like Namu Kuo said, it was fleeting. She did not look for long before there was a faint red glow on the horizon and the sky began to darken. She closed her eyes and began to think back in her mind. Namu Kuo had his hands behind his back as he stared at her. After a while, she finally opened her eyes. Her eyes sparkled and she smiled at him. Do you understand? In fact, he didn't need to ask. Just by looking at the expression of understanding on her face, he knew that she had completely understood his words. I understand. Thank you, Your Highness. Very good. I've already told you the principles. What you need to do now is to practice more. She understood his meaning and nodded. At this time, the sky had already darkened. She was standing on the peak of the mountain with the blue sky above her head, dotted with a few stars. She knew that there was nothing suitable for her to practice her observation here, unless she waited for the sun to rise. The wind blew across the mountain peak and her sweat-soaked clothes were already dried by the wind. If this continued, she did not have the confidence that she wouldn't be sick. Chapter 626. Then let's go down the mountain. She began to look for a path down the mountain. But going up the mountain was easy, going down the mountain was hard. Especially on this steep mountain, there was no path at all. She had relied on her tenacity to go up the mountain. Adding in the fact that the sky was still bright, She could clearly see where the rocks and grass were, but now there was only the faint starlight. Looking down now, she couldn't find a place to land at all. There were only protruding rocks that looked like strange shadows in the night. If she dared go down the mountain, she could fall down at any moment and break into pieces. She stood there in a daze as she bit her lower lip. Her heart was filled with anger, and the good feelings and gratitude she had for Namu Kyuo completely disappeared. Namu Kyuo. She turned around with her hands tightly clenched into fists, staring at him like an angry little beast. She now understood that Namu Kyuo's schemes were much deeper than she had imagined. He was truly worthy of being the smartest person in the world. Not only was he smart, he was also sly. He could casually dig a hole for her to jump in with her eyes closed. Namu Kyuo sat on a high protruding rock, looking very casual. The cloak on his body fluttered in the wind, like the wings of an eagle dancing in the night. Her thin clothes were blown through by the wind, and she shivered all over, but there wasn't even a place to take shelter from the wind. Namu Kyuo tilted his head and looked at her. He suddenly patted the spot beside him and grinned. "If you don't want to get sick, then sit here." She ignored him. He wanted her to throw herself into his arms, but that was impossible. She grabbed a vine and carefully climbed down. Slowly, she used a bit of strength, her toes probing the ground around her. Suddenly, her hand loosened and the vine snapped in two. She gave a short cry of shock as she fell down the mountain. Damn! As the world spun around her, she heard a curse. Then she fell into a strong embrace. Namu Kyuo used one arm to protect her head, pressing her head tightly against his chest, carrying her as they rolled down the mountain. The hard protruding rocks left countless bloody marks and wounds on his body, but he still did not let go of his arm. Suddenly, the two of them fell through the air as they fell down a cliff. Namu Kyuo took a deep breath as his arm tightly wrapped around her waist. His right hand pulled out a dagger and he stabbed it into the stone wall. The tip of the sword pierced deep into the rock, supporting the bodies of the two people who were falling down. They were hanging on a rock wall that was as smooth as a mirror, and there was a bottomless abyss below them. The mountain wind whistled through the air. There was a white mist below them and they could not see how deep it was. But if they fell down, even with Namu Kyuo's high-level martial arts, they would not be able to escape death. Little beauty, is this the result you wanted? Do you know that if I didn't save you, you would have been turned into a pile of meat by now? Namu Kyuo lowered his head and looked at her in his embrace, revealing his white teeth as he smiled. Chenning looked up. Her eyes were as clear as usual and she also revealed a smile. You're the one who took the initiative to save me. If you fall down and become a pile of meat, it has nothing to do with me. Chapter 627. You really are a strange girl. It was clearly me who saved you, but you still don't appreciate it. He smiled and pushed off the stone wall with the tip of his foot. His body suddenly rose up and flew up the cliff like a goshawk. He did not let go of the arm around her waist as he brought her up the mountain. He returned to the top of the mountain and sat down on the giant rock he was sitting on before. Put this on and you won't feel cold. He took off his cloak and placed it over her shoulders, helping her tie up the belt. Namu Kyuo, do you want to wait to see the sunrise tomorrow? She turned to look at him, not understanding why he was still staying here. With his martial arts, going up and down the mountain was like walking on flat ground. He could go down and come back up. I want to give you a present. He did not answer her question. He took out a black object from his waist. It was crooked and looked like a small iron snake. I don't deserve a reward without doing anything. Your Highness' gift, I am ashamed to accept it. Please take it back. She didn't even look at him and rejected him bluntly. Do you think it's this? Of course not. The things this prince wants to give you, you can't take it back. Namu Kyuo placed the little iron snake in his mouth and blew with all his strength. A sharp whistle pierced through the night and spread far away. Instantly the birds in the forest were startled and they flapped their wings to fly into the sky. Following that, there was a muffled sound that came from the foot of the mountain. Pung! She saw a meteor cannon fly into the sky and explode in midair. It was a riot of colors as it flowed through the sky. It was dazzling in the night and was incomparably gorgeous. So, the present he wanted to give her was this. Ning instantly understood. She immediately focused her attention and slightly leaned forward. Her eyes did not even blink as she stared at the rain of flowers in the night sky. She imprinted the ever-changing scene into her mind. She heard a ping-ping sound as meteor cannon after meteor cannon flew into the sky. It was beautiful and beautiful, looking like a fantasy. Ning did not care about cheering as she focused all of her attention on her eyes and mind. She did not see or hear anything around her. The sea of flowers bloomed in the night sky and the light from the flames shined on her cheeks. Her dark eyes were filled with a strange glow, making her look strangely beautiful. Namu Kyo looked at her without blinking. She remembered the fireworks, but he remembered her. This beautiful scene had not appeared in front of him in many years. He remembered that when he saw the fireworks with Ye Xian, he thought that they would be together for the rest of their lives, but she was like a beautiful firework. After it bloomed, all that was left for him was a lonely lamp. The mountain wind blew and the night sky was silent. No matter how beautiful the fireworks were, they would still turn into nothing. He had lost Ye Xian before, so could he have this girl in front of him? Would she be like this firework, leaving nothing behind after it bloomed? So he had to firmly remember this scene, remember the multicolored clouds reflected on her face, remember the flowers blooming like a brocade in her eyes. All of a sudden, his body trembled slightly, and the expression on his face changed. But she was completely immersed in the world of fireworks and did not pay attention at all. She did not even look at him from the corner of her eyes. Go G. Chapter 628. The poison had acted up. Damn, he had been so engrossed in looking at her that he had completely forgotten about the time the poison had acted up. Namu Kyo gritted his teeth, not allowing himself to make a sound. He wanted to use his internal energy to fight against the cold in his body, but he became colder and colder. It was like the blood in his body had turned to ice and his hands were numb. Finally, with a ping sound, he fell down like a stone statue. Namu Kyo, what's wrong? Hearing the sound of him falling, Chen Ning suddenly came back to her senses. She found that he had fallen on the stone and his body was curled up, trembling non-stop. That face that always had a bright smile on it was now pale white and his lips had turned purple. Cold? Guji. Cold? Namu Kyo's teeth were chattering from the cold and there was a layer of white frost on his hair. Chen Ning immediately understood that the poison in his body had acted up. She instantly knit her brows. There was no cure for this angel's horn in this world. The only way to slow down the poison was to soak in a hot spring. Only a hot spring filled with sulfur could make the frozen blood in his body start to flow again. But at the peak of this mountain, where could she find a hot spring? Namu Kyo. Namu Kyo. She knelt down beside him and called out. She saw that his bright eyes had already dimmed and his lips had been bitten by himself, leaking blood. She gently touched it and felt that the blood was ice cold. Standing beside him, she could feel a cold aura pressing down on her. She took off her cloak and wrapped it around him, but it was of no use to him. He was cold from the bottom of his bones. Namu Kyo, tell me, other than hot springs, is there any other way to reduce your poison? She loudly called out in his ear because she was not sure if he was conscious or not. His eyes did not seem to be moving and his body was curled up into a ball, just like a statue made of ice. Even his clothes were covered in a thin layer of ice. The more she looked, the more shocked she was. She never thought that this angel's horn would act up like this. His lips moved, but his tongue was stiff as he spat out an unclear word. She looked at his lips and nodded. She understood. He said blood. She did not hesitate at all as she pulled out the scimitar from his waist and cut her left wrist. Blood instantly flowed out. Drink, quickly drink. She placed the wound on her wrist in front of his lips and the warm blood flowed into his mouth. Namu Kyo's eyes suddenly opened wide and he stared right at her without blinking. The warm blood flowed down his throat to his stomach, and he felt a warm feeling in his body. As the warm blood increased, his body also became warmer. Enough. Enough. He wanted to say enough, but he could not say it clearly. Seeing that the blood on the wound was gradually coagulating, she cut her right wrist and continued to feed him blood. Namu Kyo closed his eyes and slowly took a deep breath. The true qi in his body slowly circulated, sending the warmth to his limbs and bones. Gradually he no longer felt cold and his stiff limbs became soft. Suddenly, he leapt up from the ground and let out a clear and melodious roar. He felt that his entire body was once again filled with energy and vitality. However, he knew that this was only temporary. The warm blood he drank could only suppress the cold poison for about an hour. He needed to soak in the hot spring to control the poison. Chapter 629. Why did you save me? Don't you hate me a lot? Why didn't you let me die from the poison? He looked down at her and said in a dry voice. He knew that time was precious and it was not the time to speak, but he couldn't help speaking. She was bandaging the wound on her wrist with her head lowered. Hearing this, she didn't even raise her head and said, "You saved me once just now, so we're even now. No one owes the other anything. You don't have to go easy on me during the competition and deliberately let me win." Competition. The only thing on her mind was that match. Namu-kyo was very curious. Was this competition that important to her? He really wanted to know what she was thinking in that head of hers, but he did not have time to find out right now. He had to go to the hot spring before the poison flared up again. "Come, let's go down the mountain." He raised his cloak and wrapped it around her. Then he carried her on his back and brought her down the mountain. "Your Highness." The carriage driver was waiting at the bottom of the mountain, and when he saw this, he quickly came forward. He had received Namu-kyo's signal to release the fireworks just now. "Send her back. Remember, if she loses a single hair, this prince will cut off your head." Namu-kyo placed her in the carriage. She had already fainted from losing too much blood and her face was as white as paper. Her long eyelashes hung down, covering her eyes. He looked at her with a complicated gaze. He had never understood her before. Ning felt that she had slept for a long time. She was very tired and her eyelids were so heavy that she could not open them. In her haze, she heard an angry voice roaring. "Why isn't she awake yet? You quack doctor, come take her out and chop her into meat paste to feed the dogs." She finally recovered her senses. Her eyelashes slightly moved and she slowly opened her eyes. A tall figure was standing in front of her bed, roaring at an old man that looked like a doctor. That old man kept kowtowing, kneeling on the ground and begging for mercy. She turned her eyes and recognized that the angry tall man was Namu-kyo. What, did he want to kill someone again? Your Highness." She opened her mouth to speak. Her voice was hoarse and did not seem like her voice at all. What was wrong with her? She wanted to sit up, but as soon as she raised her arm, it softly fell down. "You're awake." Namu-kyo suddenly turned around, looking surprised and happy. His hand quickly caught her falling body and then he sat down on the bed, letting her lean against his chest. His chest was strong and his muscles were full and supple. It was very comfortable to lean on, but his masculine scent also assaulted her nose, causing her to frown slightly. She did not want to be this close to him, but she knew that if she refused, it would only make him angry. She did not want to be so close to him, but she knew that if she said no, it would only make him angry, so she used a tactful way. As expected, when Namu-kyo heard this, he immediately got up and helped her lie back down. He stood by the bed and looked at her. "Is this better?" His voice actually had a hint of gentleness. "Chin Chin Shi Chin Ti, Chin Chin. Of Dr. Chin Chin Ti of Chin, Chin. Alright, this crown prince will make him scram." Quack scram. Namu-kyo kicked the doctor's butt and the doctor scrammed out as if he was pardoned. Chapter 630. There was still time to practice. What she was most worried about was that she didn't have enough time. The method that Namu-kyo taught her was not hard and she quickly understood it. She just needed to master it, and if she had time to practice a few more times, she was confident that she could win this competition. "Is there anything to eat? I'm hungry." She looked at Namu-kyo, who was standing in front of the bed. Ever since she woke up, he had been staring at her. His cheetah-like eyes sparkled with a light that she could not understand. His eyes were no longer looking at her like he was looking at prey, rather it was like he was studying her. But she did not have the mind to care about what he was thinking. She wanted her body to quickly recover, and what she needed was a healthy body. Feeding him blood had made her lose a lot of blood. Her body felt very light and she did not even have the strength to walk. Her eyes were turning black, but she believed that as long as she rested for 2 days and ate some blood-replenishing food, she would be fine. She still had important things to do. "Alright, what do you want to eat? I'll immediately tell them to make it." He suddenly felt a bit embarrassed. He should have already told the chefs to prepare food, but he did not think of it at all. When she was unconscious, he had been guarding her bed, not even blinking. He did not feel hungry, so he did not think that the first thing she wanted to do after waking up would be eat. "I want to eat spinach and liver porridge, red date and longan soup, chestnut glutinous rice cake, black chicken lotus root stew, and a large bowl of hot brown sugar ginger tea. The sooner the better." Ning was not polite with him as she listed several blood-replenishing dishes and porridge in one breath. "I'll remember it. Wait a bit, this prince will have them send it over immediately." When Namu-kyo heard these strange dishes, he slightly knit his brows. There were some things that he had never heard of before, but it didn't matter. As long as she ordered it, even if it was dragon liver or phoenix gall, he would give it to her. He sent people to gather all the chefs in the kitchen. Then he read out the names of these dishes and had them immediately make them, not missing a single one. The chefs looked at each other and then kneeled down together. Your Highness, everything else is fine, but it is currently April and the lotus flowers have not even bloomed yet, so how could there be lotus roots? Without lotus roots, no matter how skilled we are, we can't make a dish like black chicken lotus root. When Namu Kyuo heard this, he wanted to kill someone. But if he killed these chefs, who would make food for her? Waste, you're all waste. What use do you have for this prince? Isn't it just lotus roots? There is no need to be afraid of money. The cooks muttered in their hearts, in this world there are many things that money can't buy. Even if you are the crown prince, you can't let the June camellia bloom in April. In the summer you can't eat winter bamboo shoots, and in the winter you can't eat summer broad beans. But no one dared to say these words, no one dared to say it. This prince doesn't care what method you use, you must get the lotus root, otherwise humph. Namu Kyuo's voice's words, leaving behind a bunch of cooks complaining to the heavens. The crown prince was clearly making trouble for no reason, but they did not dare to disobey. Piping hot dishes were brought in one by one. Namu Kyuo sat in front of the bed and personally fed her. Your Highness, I'll eat it myself. Chen Ning wanted to take the spoon from his hand, but he did not let go. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.